I'm in a Google Hangout. I've got one friend here so far. I'm going to be discussing evidence for the Noaic Flood. There's more evidence for the Noaic Flood than there is for anything else in all of science. Uniformitarianism is an idea that was put forth in the 19th century for the purpose of trying to prove that God doesn't exist, or rather to hide knowledge of God by denying that God has judgment of his creation. The flood was a judgment by God of his creation. And Charles Lyell said that he thought he could convince the world that it never happened, and he could do so within 30 years. He said in a letter to Charles Darwin, I believe I can free science from Moses, and I can do so in 30 years. And when he said that, he was referring to the flood of Noah. So I'm going to be quiet for just a minute while I'm inviting some people to come to the Hangout from my other YouTube channel. And when I'm done with that, then we'll begin talking about this subject. Very interesting, fascinating subject, as a matter of fact. You're free to talk if you like. I have one guest. If you want to, I'm just taking a minute to invite some people. And let's see here. I'm going to share the video that I uploaded on YouTube with people. All right, and let me see here. Just going to keep on sharing.
Hey, Neffy.
Yeah.
I was okay. Is it okay if I invite another Christian?
Sure. That's fine.
Is it okay if I invite some non-believers? And if they get kind of rowdy, can you kick them?
Yeah, I'll try to keep order, you know.
Okay. Yes. No, because there's these people, we try witnessing to them, and I'm not gonna, if they're rowdy, well then just kick them, just whatever.
Yeah, I
But
mean, if you get too rowdy, you'll have to. But I mean, I'll try not to.
okay. Well, because I'm not gonna get too much in detail about it, but there's a lot of proof for the Lord.
No. Yeah, that's true. This hangout is primarily involved with discussing the flood of Noah, however. But
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, but it is evidence of God for sure. The fact that he flooded this earth shows his power as well. Okay, almost done sharing. I'm sharing it from both channels, my YouTube, my Nephilim Free channel, and my Evan Phillips channel. Okay, that's all the sharing I need to do then.
How many people could be in your hangout?
10.
Like 10?
10, yeah. Hangouts only support 10 people. I recently.
I remember you used to do hangouts. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I remember you used to do hangouts like for 8 hours or something.
Oh yeah, I've done quite a few for many hours. So.
Do you ever get sleepy? Because I don't think I could go that long.
Yeah, I deprive myself of sleep sometimes too. Hey, True, what's up, brother? True empiricism just popped in.
Oh, hey, true criticism. Hello.
Oh, just hanging out, man. Trying to provide some proof for people that God actually did judge the earth and flooded it, man. A lot of people don't believe it.
Amen. He did do it.
He did indeed. The evidence is plenteous. We're sitting on an average of 1,800 meters of that proof right now. The earth is covered with very deep sedimentary strata filled with rapidly buried creatures that are now fossils. The earth is covered with an average of 1,800 meters of sedimentary strata that are formed by moving water. You'll get different numbers depending on what geologist you speak to. Some will give an average of a mile, some will say more. But I go by the one that I think is a pretty mean average, and it's 1,800 meters. In fact, on my YouTube channel, on the front of my YouTube channel, is an image in which I provide a quotation by this gentleman, Professor Stephen A. Nelson, 2013, in his paper, Occurrences, Mineralogy, Textures, and Structures of Sedimentary Rocks. He states, and I quote, sedimentary rocks have an average thickness of about 1,800 meters on the continents. That's really deep stuff, man. Think about it. Walk down a city block, 1,800 meters, and turn around and look back from where you came, and you'll get an idea of how deep 1,800 meters is going down into the earth. It's tremendous. It's an awful lot of sediments. And it cannot have been produced by uniformitarianist processes. Slow deposition would never account for 1,800 meters of sedimentary strata. It just couldn't. It would, how many millions of years? You would need billions of years. I mean, besides that, they have features that prove that they were formed rapidly. They cannot have been laid down over long depositions. Just not possible. But, man, secular man, fleshy man, has a way of wanting to deny the existence of God. And so one way to do that, of course, is to deny the Bible. And if it weren't that the Bible said God flooded the earth, I'm almost convinced that that the reason uniformitarianism even exists is because the Bible says God flooded the earth. And so to deny God, you deny the evidence that God flooded the earth. You see how that works? Uniformitarianism was a concept that was conceived for the purpose of explaining the geomorphology of this earth without the flood of Noah, for the reason of denying God's judgment over his creation, for the reason of denying the existence of God. See how that works? That's the only reason uniformitarianism exists. Uniformitarianism It's a theory in geology that says that the present is the key to the past. In other words, the geologic processes going on in the Earth today at slow rates that we see things happening is roughly the rate at which these geologic processes have always been going on the Earth, always throughout the history of the Earth, with the exception of local catastrophic events like a volcano eruption or earthquake, landslide, a local flood. There's always going to be those things, and nobody can deny that, right? But they deny that there has ever been a global catastrophic event, because if that's true, then it supports the Bible. See, the Bible says there was. And so the secular geologists cannot acknowledge that there was a cataclysmic event that flooded this earth globally, because that would be acknowledging the Bible knows something they didn't know until recently in history, human history. And it would support the biblical account that God flooded the earth as judgment over a sinful world, a world that was horrifically corrupt and unfixably corrupt. And so to deny that, to deny God's judgment, they deny the flood, because they deny the existence of God. That's how it works. If it weren't for that, uniformitarianism would not be the theory in geology that so many geologists hold to. Anybody have any thoughts?
I do. I got one.
Sure.
You were just talking about how whatever you were talking about, I don't know much about uniformitarianism, but the point is, if you don't believe the book of Genesis, then you can't believe the words of Jesus Christ, because that's what Jesus was talking about to the Jewish people during that time. Was, if you don't believe his writings, how shall you believe him as in Moses? If you don't believe his writings, how shall you believe my words?
Right.
And and ultimately, stellar evolution, all these lies we see, ultimately hinders people from being saved. That's what's so bad. That's if you want to talk about something that's wicked, that's what's so evil about this, is just the fact that it hinders people from coming to from receiving everlasting life. And that's because you have to believe the gospel of Jesus Christ to have everlasting life.
That's true. Also true. I think you're right. I think that the false scientific theories of uniformitarianism and evolutionism and how they relate to the Big Bang, all of it, I think they can play a role in helping a person to choose to deny the existence of God, because it provides for them an excuse, or so they think, a reason to believe, well, God didn't really do it because the Bible says this and science says the other, so I guess the Bible's wrong. Hey, I don't need to believe in God. I'm cool without God. See, yeah, you're right. It can play a role in people to rejecting Jesus Christ, and that's unfortunate. I don't think it's going to do it by itself, but it can be play a prominent role in that. And
upon belief, yeah. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, and the thing that makes me so mad about it is that these scientists preach these ideas, evolutionism and uniformitarianism, in school, and they pump this idea into kids who are gullible and don't know any better. Little kids. I mean, they're preaching evolution theory to kids that are 5, 6, 7 years old in school. Right. And that sickens me, because it's an outright lie. Yeah. And what the world system, if I could call it that, quote unquote, the world, Christians understand what that means. If you say the world to somebody who's not a Christian, they go, oh, what are you talking about, the whole world? But when you say the world to a Christian, they know what you mean. The world is just simply trying to teach people that God doesn't exist. That's really all it boils down to. And it angers me. It really does, to see pictures of Richard Dawkins pointing to supposed ancestors of mankind on a wall, a picture of it. Little kids, 5, 6 years old, and saying, look, that's where you came from, makes me infuriated.
Oh, yeah. And by the way, what was the other guy's name? Bill Nye the Science Guy. Did you see where he was talking about, like, he was warning people that you should not, what was it? Teach creationism to your kids. He was saying, if you want to believe that, that's okay, but don't teach that to your kids because we need them.
Yeah. They've made so many ridiculous statements. Eugenie Scott, the promoter, she exists. Her role simply exists for the purpose of it's a campaign. That's all it is to.
Yeah, you know what? I also think
creationism.
I also think that I'm sorry.
She made some astonishing admissions. I've got the quote somewhere. I could read it for you. She said, "Don't debate." Basically, what she said in so many words was, "Don't debate creationists because you'll lose." Really?
Well, you are gonna lose because we're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But also, I think that someone could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that actually atheism in itself is something the Illuminati actually put out here. That secret societies came up with, and that's being taught because this right here, this theory, you can clearly see it's from the father of lies.
Oh, absolutely, it is.
And I can't remember the evidence that. Oh yeah, the evidence I had was these letters that what was his Albert Pike to a guy named I can't remember what his name was. This Albert Pike wrote like a letter.
Albert Pike was a 33-degree Freemason, I think.
Okay, okay. Well, he wrote a letter to someone, and it was predicting the three world wars. And what's interesting about those is just the Second World War, the way he described it. He wrote this letter. All you got to do is prove this letter was written by Albert Pike, because if you can, we know he died before World War II. And he described in this letter, because if it was written by Albert Pike, that means that he described World War II exactly how it came to pass. And the reason I bring these letters up, though, is because when he predicted the Third World War, he talked about atheism and how this was going to it was going to show the world the absolute effect of atheism, and ultimately people are going to destroy atheism, and Christianity are going to be destroyed at the same time, and they're going to embrace the pure doctrine of Lucifer.
Yeah, well, there is a concerted effort, that's for sure.
Yeah. And, you could look into that yourself. I mean, that's all I'm saying.
I uploaded a video this morning about a giant crack that has opened up in Wyoming State in the ground. It's pretty big. And the interesting thing about it is what it revealed on the inside of the earth, that you could see where the crack was formed. And what it shows is sedimentary strata, lots of them. And why are they there? Well, they're there because there was a flood. That's why. And I'm going to screen share for you something. Let me find a picture, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. This is powerful evidence of the flood of Noah. The earth is covered with sedimentary strata. I'm going to search and Bing for that image, and we're going to see evidence of the flood of Noah. Oh, there it is. Beautiful. Now, let me see if I can screen share this with you, and I'll show you proof of the flood of Noah right before your eyes. Let's see here. I got too many windows open. Let me close one. Okay, hold on. Let me try to screen share. Screen share is buggy. Google needs to hire people that got fired from Microsoft or something.
I think Google needs to hire people that don't exalt that which is an abomination to God.
Okay. Now, let me see if you can see that. Can you guys see this image I'm showing on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what you'll notice here is this is the big crack in the earth that opened up in Wyoming just the other day. It happened in a flash. You can see here the sedimentary strata. You see how the materials are layered? I call it layer. That's actually a geologically incorrect term to use. These are not layer, they're strata. But you can see there, and I'm going to go back.
Yeah, the top couple of layers look younger than the older layers underneath it.
And there's more. Let me find. There's an even better one that really shows the strata.
If you notice, there's a lot of soft sediment on top of the hard, older sediment, meaning a geological flood.
Here's one. Okay. You see these are strata. Look at the strata in here. You see how clear. Now the interesting thing about this is that you can see the clear, distinct boundary where one material, one mixture of materials of certain properties ends and another begins. Now, and you can see that here, and it goes down, down, down. Now, some of these can be, a millimeter thick. Some of them can be many feet thick. It depends on the rate of flow of the water that was depositing it, how heavy the material was, its coarseness, and its density. But there's the interesting thing is this clear, distinct boundary. You see, if this material were deposited over long deposition, like the uniformitarianists say, and like your university geology professor tells you, this material would not have a clear, distinct boundary one to the other. And neither would that, or these, or any of the others. Because that means as one material became more available in that given environment, and another less available, these materials would gradiate. You would see a gradation going up as one material became less and another became more. It would gradiate like a gradient. But that's not what we see throughout the whole geologic column. What we see is this: clear, distinct boundaries, just profoundly clear throughout the whole geologic column. You see that? Now, this discredits uniformitarianism because, and look here, can you see that? Look at those lines. Clear, distinct boundaries. Now, if that material were laid down over a period of 1,000 years or 10,000 years, you would have a gradient going up. It would gradiate. Instead, we have one material comes to an end and another material begins. That can only happen by water deposition in moving water. That's the only way this was formed. And it's known fact in geology now. And geologists are very slowly coming around to this. But they've been resisting it for a long time, but it's been known.
Well, they were going to resist it. Some of them will resist it all the way to their death.
And so what this is proof is that the whole geomorphology of the Earth, the shape of the Earth and the materials, the stratification going deep into the Earth, was formed by a cataclysmic event. The water that deposited this was moving rapidly, and this strata is no older than that one, or at least no older by, it could be possibly minutes to days older. Some of this down here might be as young as a day younger than this material above it, 10 feet above. Because what we've learned in hydrology is that as strata form, they do so horizontally, and one strata is deposited on top of the other almost at the same time, in most cases at the same time. Sometimes it can be that one is laid down on top of the other, and a relatively short amount of time passes. But typically, as strata form horizontally, one strata is forming underneath and another is forming on top of it at the same time. That's proven by hydrology experimentation. And so what you see here is absolute proof that the flood of Noah, because it cannot be that you would have these clear, distinct boundaries if these materials were deposited over many, many years. Another problem is, where's the erosion between them? There's none. Now, the surface of the Earth is always receiving erosion. That water, the rain, the snow, it's eroding the surface of the Earth. Everybody who's 50 years old or more knows that there's a field somewhere that they were accustomed looking at when they were a kid, and it doesn't look the same anymore. You look at the field when you were 12, then look at it again when you're 50, and it's changed. Because it's eroding in only decades. It's eroding. Where's the erosion here? And where's the erosion here? And here? It's just not there. that proves that all of this material, top to bottom, was deposited rapidly. And not just this, going down into the earth and an average depth of 1,800 meters. That's astonishing. The only way that can happen is a global cataclysmic event. Anybody have thoughts?
Well, they rejected a lot of people. I guess aren't taking the T-Rex blood as proof either.
No, they're going to be in denial of anything that argues against uniformitarianism or evolution theory, because they refuse to give those up. They cannot acknowledge creation, because then they'd have to acknowledge we have a creator. They can't acknowledge the Noaic.
I will say this as an encouragement.
Acknowledging the creator.
I will say
before
this.
I seen you, Neff, before I seen you, I seen Ian Juby, and man, he led me towards you.
You did. He told you to go check me out.
I think I seen you comment on one of his videos, and I was like, wow.
Oh, okay.
Well, I will say this as an encouragement, though. Even though all these atheists may, to be in denial of it the whole way and scoff no matter what you bring their way. There was this one guy, I don't know if you heard about this or not. This one guy who was a professor, I think of biology, and this girl, at one point, this girl walked into his office, and then she started just asking him questions, and someone's mic. Anyway, she started asking him questions, and then he eventually just realized, just by her asking questions, that what he was believing was just totally insane and ridiculous. And he eventually became a Christian through this. And so I'm saying, as much as you might, I'm just saying, I don't know if any of you are like this, but if you ever feel like you getting up here and convincing people about this stuff, that God exists through this stuff, if you ever get the feeling that it's not having an effect, I would just say that there are those out there who will come, who we don't know who, but there will be those who will be convinced, who will come to Christ through this stuff.
I think so. I don't know what impact I've had. I've received a few messages from people that have said, I don't think atheism is correct anymore, and you've played a part in that. And I've had messages from a couple of people saying, I'm leaning towards believing in creation now because of your argument. So, I mean, if one person comes to Christ, it's all worth it, right?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So,
Out of a million, yeah.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of high scholars say. By the way, I gave a link in the side chat about 5 things that the scientific method can't prove that William Lane Craig gives.
Yeah. I'm disappointed with Craig, though, because he's an excellent philosopher, and he does a great job refuting atheism. But he's an old Earth creationist. He believes, I think he actually believes that God used evolution to create.
Yeah, I get that. I think he can change, though, just like John Lennox actually changed his beliefs when he debated Richard Dawkins about evolution. I don't think John Lennox no longer ever really believed in evolution to begin with, but he said he doesn't believe in the Dawkins version of it anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Richard Dawkins is the only reason. He's kind of like a Stephen Hawking. The world just exalts him because of his. You guys already know why they're exalted. The Bible says they're fools.
I want to screen share something else with you.
Am I wrong about that, or?
I don't know. The Bible does say it.
Well, he's exalted because he's basically an atheist and he stands against us. That's basically the reason why.
Yeah, and everybody is capable of change. I believe everybody can change. I mean, just because you're one way today doesn't mean you're going to be the next way different the same way tomorrow.
It depends on the heart. The human heart is deceitfully wicked. People, some will change and some won't. What you see on the screen here is a very short list of the science some of the, just a few of the science papers that are published in journals all the way back to 1952, from 1952 to 2007. Now, this is a short list. This is just a few that I've collected. There are many more. And these papers, science papers, prove by experimentation observation that strata form rapidly, one strata upon the other, by moving water. And these are reported in the journals. And now, but what does the Uniformitarianist university professor do? Well, he ignores these papers and goes on preaching that the geologic column of the Earth was produced over millions and millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of years.
Oh, well, sure, because you're messing with their altar of the goddess Diana.
So I just wanted to show this because I've had atheists say, oh, there are no papers in the science journals that show that strata form the way you say they do. No, that's not true.
I thought Georgia Purdell had done that.
Now, she's a geneticist. Yeah. But she might discuss it. But these are science papers published in the journals from 1952 to 2007. And these are just the ones that I copied and saved in a list. If I was to collect all of them, it would be a considerable number. And these are science papers that show that stratification and lamination occur rapidly with one strata made at nearly at the same time as the one below it, and they happen in succession at the same time. And this. So when an atheist tells you there are no such thing as a scientist who's ever shown that strata form rapidly, one strata above the other, not being any older than the one below it, tell them that's not science, because it is. In fact, here's a great quote I'll show you.
Your microphone is echoing.
Yeah, somebody mute your mic, whoever it is, please, until you talk.
I think it's T. True.
American geologist Edwin McKee reported from his observations of sediments deposited in 1965 when Bayou Creek in Colorado overflowed its banks due to 48 hours of torrential rain. The stratified deposits reached a thickness of 12 feet and exhibited particle sorting and bedding planes. And that was just in 48 hours. And they were 12 feet thick. 12 feet of sedimentary strata with particle sorting. And so if you hear an atheist say, oh no, floods don't create layers, multiple layers, they create a single one, tell them no. You need to look into hydrology and geology, because it's an observed, tested, repeatable fact that moving water, that strata are formed rapidly by water. And
hey, Jeff, what do you think about whenever I come at them with this whole repeatable, observable argument, they always say, well, that's not how science is done. We build a model on something and then we test that model.
Well, they're right and wrong at the same time. Science is about the observable, repeatable, and testable, for sure. But the idea behind the model, the reason the secular community loves ideas of models so much, is because models are not empirical and they can be tweaked. You know, they're always if the experiments don't support the model, well then they say the model is wrong. They're never going to come to the conclusion that the evidence is what it is. You see what I mean? If it argues against their idea, they just need to find the right model. See, they just haven't found the model yet. They ain't got the model right yet. That's how they work it out. See, so long as they can keep changing the model and say we haven't figured out the model, they'll never have to accept the conclusion. You see what I mean? You make a model, you test for it, the results don't support the model, well, the model's wrong. We just come back and tweak the model a little bit, test, observe, conclusion. Well, the evidence still doesn't really match our model. Okay, let's go back and modify the model. See what I mean? What they're trying to do is fill their paradigm. They're trying to find something in a paradigm that they can make a model that seems to support the evidence.
Yep, I know what you're saying.
They're doing science backwards.
Yeah, here's the problem. They build the model first, and then they try to find the evidence to fit the model. How does that make sense scientifically? That's
right. That's what they're doing, exactly. You said it more succinctly than I did. That's right. That's what they're doing.
it's like looking at two different bones from two different, looking at bones from different animals and human beings and stuff, and saying, well, they must have all came from each other.
And the Big Bang Theory is a perfect.
How is that scientific? I just.
The Big Bang model is a perfect example. Their model says that there should be massive amounts of missing more matter than we observe for the Big Bang to work, right? Well, so what do? Well, they say there's dark matter out there. Most of the universe, 97% of it is dark matter. It's there. We just can't see it, and that's how they fix the model. Oh, where's the missing matter? Oh, it's there. It's just dark matter. We can't.
Just like transitional fossils or vestigial organs,
and the same thing with the dark energy. Well, where's the missing energy? There had to have been a whole lot of this energy necessary for the Big Bang. We don't seem to find it. Oh well, it's called dark energy. That's why we can't find it. See,
but it'll take millions. Don't forget, it'll take trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars to create just a little tiny bit of this substance.
Yeah. And another problem is that if there had been a Big Bang, it would have been an explosion from a center in every direction from the center. But because that's too much like the biblical account, they change it and they say the model is actually that the universe is expanding like a loaf of bread with all of the see, the problem is that everywhere we look in the universe, everything seems to be moving away from the Earth, as though the Earth is the center of the universe. Everything we observe, the redshift indicates everything is moving away from the Earth. Now that would be the case if the Earth were the center of the universe, or at least the Milky Way, right? So that can't be true, because that's a little too much like the biblical account. God creates the earth first and everything afterward, and we're the apple of his eye. No, that can't be true. So we've come up with a model, and the model says the universe is expanding like a loaf of raisin bread, with everything moving away from everything else, and there is no actual true center. That's how we fix it. See, that's how they do. They fabricate scientific ideas and put them forth as though they're well established, to get away from the actual truth, which supports the biblical account of creation.
Isn't that called faith in science? Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Neff is saying. I mean, he's 100% correct in what he's talking about. And I think really the only way that we're going to really see like some major results in the scientific community is by making sure that the lies are not going to be taught in the textbooks. And that's one of the reasons why, I mean, I can't really consider myself a young earth creationist because I don't really know a lot about young earth creationism. But that's one of the things that I love about Kent Hovind, is that he is aggressive when it comes to these lies in the textbook. And, you know, whatever material we send to the next generation of people, that's what they're going to start to believe. That's what's going to be the next generation of scientists. So, I mean, I think it really comes down to this phrase that I remember hearing growing up: men are made of iron and children are made of clay. And that's exactly what it comes down to. Whatever you teach a generation of any generation, that's what the next generation is going to come to believe is the truth. So what we have to do if we want to see this change, all these lies go away, is we have to start to make people more aware of what's going on, so that the kids are not going to be brainwashed as they grow up in the school system.
That's right. The problem is that's so difficult to do, because the scientific community is ruled by people with accolades and academic accreditation and high levels of education, and it's a buddy system as well. And so long as these people are in power, and so, then it's really difficult to do. Let me give you an example of how it works. And this is how Uniformitarianism and evolutionism took over science back in the 1900s. It was a coup. They performed a coup. They actually did. Just like people would run in and overthrow a government, that's what they did. And look at it like this. Let's say you have, I'll give you an example. Many years ago, I had a job in a particular department for a big corporation. And in that, when I went to work for that corporation in that department, now, I'm not a racist person. And but there are racist people who are black, and there are racist people who are white in this world. Don't let anyone ever tell you racism doesn't go both ways. It does. When I went to work for that company in that department, the manager of that department was a Caucasian person, and there were about 7 Caucasian people in that department out of 32 people. I left the company a year later, and I was the last white person in that department. And so here's what happens. No, the second to the last. No, there's like 11 white people when I started. Here's what happens. The manager, a month after I took the job, the manager quit, and a black person took the job as manager of that department. And that manager would, every time somebody would quit or get fired, they would hire somebody, but they would only hire black people. And so over a period of 1 year, she had weeded out all of the white people down to 2. And when I left, there was 1. So when you get somebody who has a paradigm, and it's unfortunate. Now, I'm not trying to, I want to say first, I'm not a racist person, and I hate racism. I truly do. It's not what God wants for mankind. We're all the children, the offspring of Noah and his 3 sons, all of us. And racism has no place in this world. But there are racist people who are white, and there are racist people who are black too. And that, what I'm trying to say is, when in science, what has happened in science is just very much like what happened to me in the corporation that I worked for in that department. Somebody who gets in a position of authority in the scientific community, scientific circles like the American Academy of Sciences, and this person is an atheist. And when it's time to replace them, somebody in that organization, because a particular position needs to be replaced, they're not going to consider somebody who believes in creation. They're only going to hire people that think the way they do, you see. And so what happens is relatively quickly, you take over that area, that organization with people that think like you do. And that's exactly what has happened in science. It happened in the 1800s with evolution theory. They began ousting creationists. And in fact, the creationist geologists of the day, almost all geologists of the day, in the early to mid 1800s were creationists. They were called biblical geologists.
And by the way, did you see that human zoo experiment that they did? Human zoo?
I got a video series on my YouTube channel, a documentary about human zoos.
And I just want to hit on what you just said right there, 2.5, and just sort of vouch for you too at the same time that I dealt with racism, like really bad racism, growing up too. I'm Native American, Pawnee, and my father's Mexican, and the area that I grew up in, there was a lot of racism, and which led into some fights occasionally growing up. So I can understand the racism that you're pretty much talking about, but I think that it's a good example because when you look at the scientific paradigm, what's going on in this industry, that's exactly what's happened. They've basically weaved out anybody and everybody that would disagree with that paradigm.
That's right.
I mean, if you look at really what's going on in the scientific industry, if you want to call it that, nobody can really point out any of these serious flaws in evolution, and their thoughts being respected, even if it's fact. I mean, you go to the Precambrian or the Cambrian era, just there. Even if you're going to go to according to their time, which I don't agree with, that we've been here for billions of years, but even if we're going to go by their time, the Cambrian era, the chordates, and many of these other, phyla were already there. Some of the main phyla were already established.
Almost all phyla are found in Cambrian. Yeah.
Exactly. So I mean, and this isn't a matter of opinion. This is a fact. I mean, just think about. I just had to talk to somebody about this earlier today. Just think about going it from their time frame. The time doesn't help them because the reality, even going by their time scale, it doesn't show what they're trying to present. So here's the point. I mean, what is it that anybody can do? What is it that anybody can do? Anybody that comes with a disagreeing opinion, well, give me a peer-reviewed article. Well, okay, well, who's going to be doing the process of the peer-reviewed article. Who's going to allow that?
Yeah, who is going to
people in my group, you know, and we don't like those ideas. So whatever we deem not to be true.
Well, they would sympathize and they would say that there are atheists and there's Christians and there's Buddhists and there's all these people in the scientific community and blah blah blah, and you know, I'm like, well, who are these people? Because if they're saying that we're all from a common ancestor, I don't know how they're getting their Christian views.
Well, they're certainly going to take discrimination against Christians the most. We know that, and that's evidence that Christ is the truth by itself, right there. You know, it's going to meet the most resistance. You know,
not only that. Hey, Neff, can you put up a link or screen share eventually that human zoo thing? Because I've been looking that stuff up forever now, and once I seen it, man, it scared the crap out of me. It's almost like the way that it's almost like the way that they discriminate against Native Americans. Almost they used to put these people in human zoos because they thought that they were.
Okay. I'm sorry, I was just trying to figure out what you're talking about. You mean to whom?
I can do it if you want me to.
Yeah, I don't really want to turn this into a human zoo thing, though. It's pretty
no. I was just saying not here, but yeah, put up a link to it later so that everybody can see it because I want to see it again.
There's a documentary that's uploaded to my YouTube channel called Human Zoos: Science's Dirty Little Secret. And it's disturbing, but it's interesting. It's all about racism and how, what they don't tell you actually well, they do say it. They don't harp on it much, but the conclusion is, the truth is that evolution theory was used as a tool for bolstering the racism of Caucasian people, and it had an effect on racism. It promoted an increase in racism, and because evolution theory is inherently racist, that's a subject I can explain. But so it was used to promote racism, and it made a lot of white people think that they're the epitome of creation, so to speak. But evolution has produced white people as the superior tribe of mankind, and everything else is lesser evolved or, never advanced as far as white people. And it's just disgusting. It's vile.
Yeah, they wanted to wipe out the American Indians.
Yeah.
May I comment?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Well, me and brother Eric are here. We actually had Kent Hovind on our channel once.
Cool.
And we had this other atheist. He was basically telling us about that everything is subjective and everything goes by according to how other people feel and stuff like that. And I'm just like, how can you get morals out of evolution? I've actually studied this stuff. I used to believe in this garbage because I was told to, and then when you start looking into it.
Well, this was the discussion we had with him. If anyone here wants to look at it, that's up to you.
Yeah, I love what you said right there. Did he take off?
Yeah, there's a lot of people meeting Kent Hovind on Google Plus lately. Wyatt Meekus, if you know that kid, Wyatt Meekus, he's a pretty nice kid.
I had muted my mic, so.
Yeah, I can't believe Kent Hovind's talking to just anybody. I mean, all you got to do is email the guy, and he'll call you on Google Hangouts.
Yeah, because he's.
Well, see, the thing is, I don't mean to call anyone out, but there's a guy. Should I say his name or should I not? What do you?
Well, they're gonna find out already.
Nah, don't say his name.
Okay, well, anyway, never mind then. Go ahead and continue.
Well, you don't have to say his name, but what did he do?
Well, it's in this video. All of it's in. The video is called Hovind versus agnostic atheist.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Oh well, yeah, that's the video that he was in though. All you gotta do is look at it and you'll see.
Oh, well, Kent Hovind knows a troll. Don't get me wrong. He's been dealing with trolls all of his life. You know what I'm saying? The guy, Eric Hovind, his son, deals with literal trolls. He takes people out off of the internet like Thunderful, and publicly humiliates them at their own events. So, I mean, you know, his son is obviously idiot savant, if that's what you want to call it. But I mean, his son destroyed Thunderfoot face to face in real life.
I saw it. Yeah, that was pretty amazing.
That was hilarious. That was one of the best moments of my life. I was like, wow, Thunderfoot can't even explain his own existence.
That's the thing about these guys online. I mean, you can act like you're smarter than you actually are on the internet. You know, when you've got the company of thousands of atheists supporting you, even if you fail. But I think, you know, when you get them offline like he did, I think you begin to see that it's not as easy as it is online when you can just, you know, lie about people.
And they're just so childish and so, like, arrogant. You know, these people, when you meet them in real life, you realize that they've got some kind of vendetta or some kind of revenge.
Well, it has to do with what the Bible predicted would happen. This the New World Order emerging. If you guys don't want to talk about it, you're avoiding something very important.
Well, no, it's not one of my favorite subjects. You know?
Well, it's the reason that's so important is just because that ties up this, you know, atheism and all that stuff.
I know it does.
I agree with you, brother, but I think Jesus is more important than any.
Jesus is more important, but we can lead people to Jesus through that.
That's true. It's just not a subject I particularly enjoy. I think people are going to be more convinced by, you know, conspiracy theories are hard to prove, and people, when you say a conspiracy theory, immediately you get people look at you cross-eyed, you know, like.
Well, then the moment you say Jesus, they look at you cross-eyed anyway too.
Well, I know, but the thing about the New World Order is that there's so much misinformation about it.
Oh, there is for sure. Yeah. But there's things that are just. I'm not talking about just going online and just believing everything you hear. I'm talking about looking at videos of like Obama saying certain things. Yeah. And George Bush Sr. saying certain things, and going to the Bible and looking in Thessalonians and how it talked about the man of sin walking into the temple of God, proclaiming himself that he's God. And this has to do with, you know, how you were talking about the atheists and them being arrogant and all this different stuff. Well, and you talked about how the atheists, even though they lose, they have atheists who support them. Well, see, they're willing to show false love to unbeliever, like atheists, the atheist community. They'll show false love to people to try to get them to be a part of their group, because this is ultimately a war against God.
I'll tell you what. I'll tell you this Illuminati aside. I'll tell you this, that what makes atheism satanic is the direct parallel between the scribes and Pharisees and that of mainstream atheism that you see here on the internet. You see people presenting themselves as what? They present themselves as people who are reasonable, who are rational. They call themselves the bright, and that they want the truth and the evidence. The scribes and Pharisees, they walked around in robes, and they loved to be righteous and of truth in the appearance of men. In the book of Revelation, it talks about how a lamb that had a tongue like a dragon, and the scripture says that, think it not strange that if the devil comes to you as an angel of light, then his children would come to you as men of righteousness.
Amen.
So exactly how we see the atheists conduct themselves, wanting to be men of truth and of reason and of rationale, of wisdom, the brights. That's exactly the description that you see from what's given for the spirit of Antichrist, the children of the devil, or the scribes and Pharisees, those types of Antichrist in Scripture.
Yes.
So, I mean, there's where the parallel connects right there. Whether the Illuminati, all that other stuff, I think that they sort of presents themselves exactly what we would expect the children of Satan to be according to Scripture.
Well, either way you want to put it, the Illuminati or whatever, the point is that there's the Antichrist that's coming. That's what I try. Like, see, I wouldn't even care about the Illuminati if it wasn't for what the Bible warns us about. Now, it's just the Illuminati's fitting the description of that. But there's like with the atheists, the ones who deny that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. You have to also realize these people have the spirit of Antichrist because they deny.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't say that. Some of these people, like I used to be an atheist about 5 years ago, and I came to Christ about 5 years ago. So I wouldn't say that I had a spirit of Antichrist. I just maybe I didn't like Jesus, or I thought the church was a money scam or something like that.
Neo, the Bible says you're either with me or you're against me. Christ.
Well, that doesn't mean Antichrist. I mean,
well, let's put it this way: if you deny that Jesus Christ came in the flesh, the Bible says very directly that that is the spirit of Antichrist.
That's right.
And John,
How obvious can you get with denial? I mean, how obvious can you get with denial? I mean, you're talking to people who want to act like they want the truth, and science is their go-to, right? Science is supposed to be their go-to, and they want evidence of something being created, being proof for a creator. And then you show them a motor like ATP synthase or the bacterium flagellum, and there's still excuses aside. I mean, how much more clear can you get than that? Physical evidence of creation than a motor.
Oh, the DNA molecule, for crying out loud.
I mean, DNA, all of these things that we talk about all the time. I mean, I don't think that there's really any arguing room for them anymore. I mean, just really, I think the denial is pretty clear.
Yeah, well,
some of these people call themselves atheists, but they're not really atheists, is what I'm saying.
Now, speaking of geology again for a minute, several years ago, Thunderfoot, who is a fellow who's a popular, prominent atheist on YouTube, has a large following, tens of thousands of subscribers, and he mocked the flood of Noah and tried to show that it's false, that all the strata of the earth could not have been created by the flood. What he did was he did a little backyard experiment. He got himself an aquarium and he filled it up with water and he put a bunch of material, dirt in it, and he swirled it up real good and he let it settle, and it did not turn into strata. Well, and then he says, well, there you go. Now, firstly, he didn't have a mixture of broadly enough mixture of different materials. That's failure number one. And failure number two is that's a little backyard experiment he conducted under the false belief that strata are formed over long deposition and not by floods. I already showed in this Hangout a video capture of a text form file that I have that shows about 12 or 18 different papers in science journals going all the way back to 1952, and there are many more that show that scientists have demonstrated that stratification and lamination occur in moving water, not standstill water, and that strata and lamination are formed by flood deposits, as flood deposits. And so Thunderfoot's little backyard experiment was a complete laughable matter. It was absolute. He buffooned himself with this little backyard experiment, and all you have to do is watch that video of him and shake your head in embarrassment for the guy. I mean, it's absurd. It's been demonstrated that stratification and lamination take place because of moving water, not standstill water. I mean, floods do not create a single layer. I mean, if the only material available to a local flood is a particular material, like nothing but it moves a massive amount of dirt from one place and deposits it somewhere else, well, then you'll have basically what looks to be like a single layer. But that's not typical of the whole geologic column across the continents. What you have is multiple strata with various materials and sorted. Now, that's what happens with a local flood, which moves a large area of material that has more than one type of material. It moves them, sorts them, and deposits them as strata somewhere else. So Thunderfoot actually just gooned himself with this completely erroneous backyard experiment When I first watched that video, I was just looking at I was looking at the camera with my head in my hands, and I was shaking my head, thinking, "Oh my word!
How long ago was this thing?
What ignorance of the subject!" I didn't know what to say. I was so embarrassed for the fella.
How long ago was this experiment?
I'm sorry.
How long ago was the experiment?
How long? Well,
Yeah.
just minutes, because it only took minutes for most of the material to settle in the water. And the aquarium, I don't know how much weight. It looks like he put about 10 or about maybe 15 or 20 pounds of dirt into an aquarium and stirred it up and let it settle. It only took a matter of minutes for it to settle. In fact, most of it probably settled within 1 minute.
Like, I'm just gonna say though, like, I couldn't understand where you're coming from. So like, I've seen a little bit of Thunderfoot stuff, and I've seen other people kind of like debunk his stuff. Like,
Yeah, I've debunked his stuff, and he's tried to debunk my stuff.
oh, I'm gonna be honest. Does he kind of have like the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Dunning-Kruger.
Or Dunning-Kruger effect, one of those two.
I think that's prominent amongst atheists, it seems.
Yeah, I heard that he's supposedly a super intelligent man and stuff, and I just find him kind of immature.
Well, the thing is that these people are just in denial of the actual scientific evidence. Look at the geologic column. It's filled with rapidly buried creatures which are now fossilized. And fossilization is almost impossible today. Did you know that? It's almost impossible to get a fossil today. There are a few locations in the earth where, on a rare occasion you can get a fossil. But to get a fossil requires the right kind of minerals in the right mixture. It was the fact that we have a geologic column filled with so many fossils is a testament to the fact that the earth was covered with water that had the right mineral content. It doesn't today. So where did this special circumstance come from if it wasn't the flood? Because the earth has not been having the right mixture of chemicals in waters, minerals, that would transform a creature into a fossil throughout all this time. It happened once during the flood of Noah. The minerals came from within the earth. When God split the earth open at the mid-oceanic ridges, massive amounts of hot water dragged boodles of tons of minerals out into the oceans and upon the earth, and it stratified the earth, bearing millions and billions of creatures rapidly and making fossils out of them. Now, when that happened, the water would not have looked clear by any means because of the flood erupting and dragging so many millions of tons of minerals out from inside the earth and putting them on top of the earth in the oceans. During the flood of Noah, the waters would have been murky looking. It would have been a very unclear water because of all the sediments and all of the minerals that came from within the earth were in the water now. And that's why we have a fossil record. It's non-repeatable. It's completely non-repeatable. This entire geologic column filled with fossils is non-repeatable. It cannot have happened any time but the flood because the oceans are relatively clear. So where did all this minerals go? See, it points to the flood as explaining why there were so many minerals. If the earth waters had the kind of minerals in them to create fossils 500 million years ago, the waters had to have been murky looking. Now, if 200 million years ago, the fossils supposedly formed at 200 million years ago would have required this water to be murky looking because it would have been chock full of the right minerals necessary to create a fossil. But is that what the Uniformitarianist camp believes? Do they believe the oceans have always been murky looking, heavily laden with minerals? No, they don't. So how do you explain the geologic columns, massive amounts of fossils all throughout the depth of the geologic column, if the oceans have been relatively clear all these hundreds of millions of years? You see what I mean? It's a problem for them they cannot answer. Absolutely cannot. The only reason we have a geologic column filled with so many creatures that are fossils going down to such great depths is because that mineralized water was a one-time event. It's non-repeatable. It was the flood of Noah that explains it, and the oceans have not been murky-looking all throughout the history of this earth. For the Uniformitarianists' idea about the strata building slowly over millions and millions of years to be true, the oceans of this world would have to be heavily laden with minerals throughout the whole history of the earth. Do you see? That's a tremendous problem for the Uniformitarianist. And it's powerful evidence that this was a cataclysmic event, one time, unrepeatable, non-repeatable event in which the oceans were massive, filled with massive amounts of minerals that could make fossils. That's why we have a geologic column filled with so many fossils, because of the flood of Noah. And the Uniformitarianists, only thing that they could do if they wished to give even a slightest argument that the earth is millions of years old, all these strata, the whole geologic column is many millions of years old, is to believe the oceans of this earth have been heavily laden with minerals and murky looking throughout the whole history of the earth. But that would be nonsense to believe. They can't possibly argue for that. So how do they fix the problem? They can't. So what do they do about it? They sweep it under the rug and don't talk about it. See, they don't talk about the massive problems, the tremendous problems their theories have. They just gloss over it. And most college students don't pick up on it. They don't think about it. They don't stop and say to themselves, hey, wait a minute, for the geologic minerals, a lot of minerals in water, darkish looking water, is necessary for you to get fossils. I mean, and because the creature is going to erode away, bacteria are going to eat it up, it's going to be gone in probably a year or less, maybe two at the very most, maybe even months, just a few months, if there's not a lot of minerals in the water to make a fossil out of it. It's just going to erode away. Aerobic or anaerobic bacteria are going to eat it up. Okay, it's got to be a lot of minerals in the water then, so that the fossil can form a lot faster than it could be destroyed by bacteria and worms. Okay, now this fossil, 70 feet higher or 150 feet higher in the geologic column, is also a fossil. That means the water had to be heavily laden with minerals then too. And then we go up another 150 feet. That fossil would require heavily mineral-laden water as well. Hey, gee, it looks like the whole history of this earth, the water has been heavily laden with minerals. But has it? See, connect the dots. Most college students, it goes right over their head. They don't even think about that. And the reason is because they're never given any information that would cause them to question. If you just connect the dots, you'll see the geologic column and the fossils therein cannot be explained by anything but the flood of Noah, unless you believe the Earth's waters have always been darkish and heavily laden with minerals throughout the whole history of the Earth. But clearly that can't be the case. There's so many species in the oceans today that couldn't survive that for very long. It was a miracle that we have so many species in the oceans today, and that all of them didn't go extinct because of the flood. Many did. Many did. Out of all the scientists believe, out of all the species that have ever existed on this planet, 99% of those species are now extinct.
Exactly.
And what explains that? The flood does. In many thousands of species, hundreds at the very least, many hundreds of species of water-dwelling creatures are now found in the fossils, but they don't exist today and haven't supposedly for millions of years. What explains that? Massive extinction. Now, if you go look at the papers and the articles and the science websites, like Science Daily and whatnot, you'll find plenty of articles about massive extinctions. They believe there has been 2 of them. So how do they explain that away? Well, their famous friend. It's always a comet. or an asteroid strikes the Earth, throws up gobs of dust in the Earth, chokes off lots of creatures, fills the ocean with sediments, kills off all kinds of oceanic creatures, and they go extinct. And then it's all over with in a matter of a few years or decades. The sky's clear, and there was a one-time event. But it's never can't be the flood of Noah that did it. No, that's too much like the Bible. So it was an asteroid. See? But they acknowledge at least that there has been a mass extinction in the past. Now, the flood's what explains that. Now, let's connect the dots. Mass extinction, okay. The oceans can't have been filled with heavily laden minerals, heavily laden with minerals throughout the whole history of the Earth. It would have taken heavy amounts of minerals in the oceans to create the fossils that we see in the geologic column. So here's what we can conclude. The whole geologic column was created by a cataclysmic event in which all of the oceans of the Earth were heavy with minerals, and the oceans and the whole geologic column formed rapidly. That's the only rational conclusion. But they can't come to that because it sounds too much like that Bible. I'm going to go get some coffee. I'll be right back.
By the way, the reason that I think they sweep that under the rug is because kind of the same reason why they sweep the cure for cancer under the rug, even though they got it, they don't introduce it into the market, or they try to keep it away from the market because it's a money-making thing.
I'm about to say it too. It's a money-making scheme.
Yeah, and that's it. If they were to deny a lot of these guys, if they were to just renounce evolution, like macroevolution, then they would lose their job, like what happens to most, and they would lose their source of income.
They had to lose their job. Lots of them.
But there are those who can make that sacrifice, and that sacrifice is well worth it.
There's a man recently who lost his job because he discovered that well, he didn't make no implications, but he found soft dinosaur tissue in the form of a triceratops, and all he was doing was his works. You know, he found his work, and they can't. His colleagues realized what he was discovering, so they fired him.
Right, I heard that.
I can't remember his name though.
Who? Which one?
We were talking about the guy who found. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you were talking about the guy who found the T-Rex blood, and they.
The woman. Yeah.
Oh no, it was a triceratops recently up in Washington, I believe where it was.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I think it's the triceratops person, because a couple people found so-called T-Rex blood, and I haven't heard anything about that.
May I comment?
It's an open mic.
Go for it.
I'm sorry, I'm eating. But I wish I could remember the guy's name recently. It's been about a year since he found this soft tissue in triceratops.
Hey, in the hangout, you just gotta take the mic when you want to. If you want to talk, just go for it.
Well,
What do you guys feel
I was saying before. I'm sorry.
as soon as okay. No, go ahead. It's fine.
I was just gonna say what we were talking about when you were getting coffee was just the reason why they sweep that evidence about the geologic column and the geography. The reason they sweep that under the rug is kind of for the same reason they sweep the cure for cancer under the rug, even though they have it. It's because of money.
So, like, medical science is like.
I'm skeptical about the idea that they found a cure for cancer.
Yeah, that's a little. I'm with Neff on that one. It seems kind of dubious that medical science and geologic science together are like, hey, for some reason we need to hide the cure for cancer from people, and we need to hide the fact that the Earth is not
Right,
billions
because
of
they
years
would
old.
never do that to anyone. They're good people. Anyway.
Well, no, it's just you're putting together like hundreds of millions of people, and like assuming they're all able to like collude on some nefarious position.
Well, you know what? If they are hiding the cure for cancer, and it came out and released, the pharmaceutical companies will lose billions of dollars, and a lot of doctors who are in the medical field of researching cancer will lose their job. Just saying.
I mean, there's lots of different cancers. Are you saying just like a cure against the concept of cancer, or
They
like
got
is
they
it
got a
cure
cure for every single disease we come up against.
I don't think so. So.
Yeah, Evan, you and I could agree on that. It just seems.
Well, can we? I was gonna say, can we get back on subject?
Yeah, good call. What do you guys think about? I was looking up. A lot of people who argue against the global flood are actually Christians who think that it was actually a local flood. And I'm interested in what you guys think about the idea of the Genesis flood actually being local instead of global.
It can't
Well,
be.
the Bible directly
Hold
talks about. Well, the Bible directly says that it covered the face of the whole earth, doesn't it? Yes.
Yeah, I've seen that too. That's why it seems kind of.
That just contradicts what they're saying. Just like the serpent in the garden, he was like, "Hath God said?" And then she said, "God told her to tend this," and then the serpent just said, "You shall not surely die." So it was a direct denial of what God said, and that's exactly what you see with this community.
So I want to share a picture with you. This is one of many boulders found like this in the side of a hill or a mountain, and you can see that this boulder here, this rock, when the strata formed, they formed around it. Now, rock doesn't bend, and there is a fault right here you can see, and it has moved a little bit. Okay, it has moved a little bit.
What about slick insides?
But very big, very little. And it did not, the movement of the fault did not cause the the curve of the strata around
Yeah,
that
it doesn't
boulder.
look like that.
Right. So what has happened here is this boulder was in place, the strata were forming already. The boulder got washed into place by moving water, and the strata formed around it, you see. Now, that's not going to happen over massive periods of time. That's a rapid deposition there.
You know, it sounds like you definitely correctly explained what happened here. Definitely. I'm interested in what do you think about slick insides, though?
About what?
Slick insides. It's where imagine you have a phone book, and if you have a phone book, and if you like twist a phone book, you could see all the pages in the phone book. They twist and they curve and stuff. Very, very minutely in the phone book, that twist and curve generates heat. And when you have a lot of layers on top of each other, and you have that kind of heat and pressure, you can actually have like S shapes in strata formed in solid rock. And because of the pressure, you can get crazy curves like that. Look up slick insides. I'll type it in the side for you.
But heat, the strata of the Earth were formed in water, and so that's a natural coolant. There wouldn't have been a massive amount of heat while strata formed.
Exactly. What you would see is a lot of like brittle cracks, but you don't see that in slick insides.
Well, I mean, there are always going to be exceptions, you know. But I'm talking about the majority of the geologic column is strata which formed by moving water. Almost.
That's the other thing. That's the other thing I wanted to ask you.
There is always going to be inclusions, you know, things like salt inclusion or volcanic material that got buried in on top of sediments and then buried and then buried by further sediments. You know, there's always exceptions. The geology of the Earth is not completely uniform. So
Well, there's two things there. The salt is actually, I think, a big issue for younger creationists because you'll have meters thick of salt in the middle of strata all over the world. There's the Salinas salt that's part of central Michigan. You'll also have salt in Europe, and I believe also down in Texas where the Gulf of Mexico is. There's all these layers in the middle of the strata of salt, and if there was a worldwide flood, that salt would have dissolved.
Would have?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, salt's water soluble, right?
Yeah, but if you have a massive dump of salt coming out of the earth, and it's in rock form already, why would it get dissolved if it's buried in a period of just 1 year? And
Why would salt?
sediments are building on it by feet a day, right?
Sure. Why would you have salt? Well, you would actually have that salt would dissolve. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
I'm
but
having
how
trouble
much?
hearing.
What percent?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, what percent? Let's say you have a massive amount of salt come out on the earth in rock form, and you have a million tons of salt come out from inside the earth in rock form and collects in a particular location. And it's buried under sediments at a rate of several feet a day.
Yeah.
Why do you think that it had to have all eroded away? What maybe if it was if it was a million tons of salt, what you might end up with is 200,000 tons of salt left after water took away some percentage of it. So that really doesn't explain. There's no reason for me to believe that water should have eroded all of it. You see what I mean? After all, the sedimentation is burying things, right? So as it's being eroded, it's also being buried.
Yeah. See, underwater, the only way you can not have salt eroded underwater is through, I forget the name of the guy, but there's a special type of action that occurs where
I'm
if
not
you do
saying
have salt.
erosion didn't occur, but you're not giving me a reason to believe all of it should
Well,
have
I'm trying to
been
give it to you right now. Sorry if I'm talking too slow for you. The thing is that, yeah, underwater, if you have salt forming in sedimentary layers underwater, it's going to dissolve. The only way that you can't have it dissolve underwater, which is what the deposition, it all occurred underwater, which is what you mentioned, is through, I forget the name of the guy, but there's a special type of reaction. And that's when you have two different volumes at two different, I believe, speeds of salt coming together, where salt can be laid down underwater in the type of, in the way that we see it all around the world. The only issue with that is that you would see a bunch of other impurities in that salt. You would see a bunch of mud, and it would obviously look like it was laid down really quickly. That's not what we're seeing in all this salt around the world. And
Right.
not just salt, by the way, anything that's water soluble.
And
Instead,
if that salt came out in rock form, then I don't see any reason why it should be filled with impurities.
Well, the issue is that this is all the salt that I'm talking about comes with a lot of detritus, and it comes with a lot of material that's associated with evaporites. And so it's obvious that this is salt coming from inland seas that occurred
And now you just moved the
various times in
goalpost to
geologic past.
evaporites. That evaporites
No.
don't explain massive salt deposits that are found throughout the geologic column.
No, it's included in all these salt deposits. I'm sorry if you thought I was moving the goalpost.
So, yeah, but I mean, we're talking about massive salt deposits. That's not related to evaporites.
There's evaporites related to the salt deposits that I brought up. Remember, I mentioned there's salt.
Yeah, but I mentioned massive salt deposits, and evaporites don't explain those.
Okay, well, the salt deposits that I mentioned, which are in central Michigan, they're also located in near the Gulf of Mexico and Texas, and also in Europe. those do come with detritus and evaporites, all examples of salt coming from an inland sea. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not sure what you're talking about.
I don't have any problem with salt, with the existence of evaporites, but I will say that some of what are called evaporites are probably no such thing as an evaporite. However, that doesn't address what I was discussing. I was discussing large salt deposits, and those are not created by evaporites.
Oh, you're just talking about, yeah, there certainly are large salt deposits, like you said, that aren't created in the way that I'm talking about.
That's right.
But those
That's what
are,
I'm talking
the reason why I'm not talking about that is because that's not relevant to the arguments that I'm using.
Well, that's the argument.
Hey, Joe, can I ask a question? Or Joe, your name?
Sure, please. Yeah.
I don't know all's in this thing. I just see a bunch of people coming on this thing. But you believe in God?
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to make sure. So you are an atheist?
Yes.
Okay.
But the arguments I'm using actually do come from someone who does believe in God.
There are a lot of legitimate arguments atheists make, but at the bottom of the day, do you believe Jesus Christ is the Son of God?
No.
Well, that means you have the spirit of the Antichrist.
Sure, why not? But I believe that's kind of irrelevant to whether or not a global flood occurred, because plenty of Christians disagree that a global flood occurred. I think that attacking me personally... I'm sorry?
That doesn't make them right.
Well, sure, yeah, but if you agree that me being an atheist doesn't have anything to do with what we're arguing, right? We're just talking about science.
Well, I think you're in here arguing because you don't want to believe in God, but that's a side issue.
Well, like I said, a bunch of people who are Christians disagree.
Irrelevant to whether...
Yeah, it doesn't, just because there's Christians that tap
so it shouldn't matter if I'm an atheist or not.
Doesn't necessarily mean that makes it right, though. I think the point is that objection doesn't make it true just because there's Christians that have an agreement that happens to fall in line with you. I think that's what I'm trying to say.
No, definitely, and I agree. That's the point I'm making. It doesn't matter whether or not.
What is the core reason why you don't believe in God?
I mean, do you guys want to go down that road? I think
that's the road. That's the road that you're trying to go down here, obviously, unless you're just trying to.
No, not at all.
Well, I mean, the hangout's primarily about geology.
Exactly. Right. I mean, I can talk.
But the whole point of through the geology. What is it? All right. What is it about geology that causes you to believe in atheist, to believe that there is no God?
Geology doesn't lead me to believe that there is no God.
Well, then are you just here to argue with everyone?
No, I have a geology minor, and so I think that when people try to say that, well, you have, when people try to link geology with the concept of God, I mean, I want to talk about geology. I'm sorry if you guys really actually want to talk about God versus atheism. But
well, I mean, I'm just trying to say, do you believe in a supernatural God?
Someone was coughing, but I think you asked, do I believe in the supernatural or something?
Sure.
And again, this is your room. If you wanna go down this road, I'm fine. I'm not sure why it's relevant to theology.
Joe, hey Joe, I'd like to say something real quick. A little while ago, you just said that this is why the young Earth creationists have a problem, and then you went on with quite a bit about the geology, and you are talking geology, but after saying something like that, it's to me, whether you're here trying to convince everyone to not believe in God, you certainly seem here. Hold on though. You certainly seem here to be showing people that the evidence of geology refutes young Earth creationism, and therefore pretty much refutes everyone's belief in this room right now. So I don't know. Maybe there's some not a young Earth creationist in here, but I don't know. That's what I heard you say, so I'm just bringing that up.
Yeah, but it doesn't refute God. Go ahead, Evan. Sorry.
Here's, I'm going to show you another boulder like the one I showed you a moment ago. Here's a man standing on the side of a mountain, and you can see the clear stratification of the mountain is comprised of strata. And now here's a very rectangular looking boulder, by the way.
So
And
is my
you
point
can
that I
see
brought up
them.
earlier going to be shoved under the rug because you guys wanted
No,
to
you tried to
talk
move
about
the
atheism?
goalpost to
I
an
didn't. They
apparatus.
started asking me if I was a believer or not.
Well, I think I addressed it, and I said if I'm talking about rock salt that came out of the earth
But it
in
was a point I
in
brought up.
in rock form. There's no reason to believe that all of it should erode away because it's salt. But here you see another boulder where we can see the strata formed around the boulder in place. Right?
But that's a different type of salt.
It was this boulder was was moved here by water. You can see how it's sunk down into and deformed the strata. Its weight. That's about a 2 or 3 ton stone right there, maybe more. And,
salt also dissolves instantly.
We'll go back to salt if you want. Rock salt doesn't dissolve instantly.
That's not the salt I'm talking about. I don't know how many times I have to say that.
There's a guy. There's a guy. I'm sorry.
Hold on.
I'm let half a little free.
So these strata then buried this boulder. Now, the Uniformitarianist believes that these strata, remember, they formed over vast geologic time. They would say that this strata down here is probably many thousands of years older than the one above. Probably tens of thousands of years older. Like how
it depends on what kind of rock it is.
This is buried in an awful lot of stratum. Now, the interesting thing about this rock is, look at the corners of it. You see how sharply those corners are? Look at these corners.
What kind of rock is that? Where is that?
I don't know what type of rock it is. It looks
That's kind of important, is it not?
Well, yes and no. If I finish my point, you'll see why.
Sorry, go ahead.
The point is, this boulder has extremely fine corners. It's an unusual stone because it forms so rectangular, but nonetheless, you see how sharp these corners are, right? Now, some of the problem is rock is not going to sit on the earth, waiting, being eroded. Well, if these deposits, the strata, were laid down over vast geologic time, and you've got this one and this one down here, and this one down here is 100,000 years or 15,000 or 20,000 years older than these above, then that means that while this rock was exposed here, you got many thousands of years between the strata it's sitting on and the one it's buried in. Now, I don't know about you, but I just don't believe rock is going to retain its natural curved surface over that many thousands of years of erosion. And I'm going to give you a piece of evidence that's true. Let me show you something.
But can I respond to that? You mentioned
I'm not
pretty
through.
big.
Hold on.
Okay.
Yeah. What is the name of that? I've forgotten the name of it. That Egyptian creature statue that was made. It looks like a
the Sphinx.
Sphinx, yes. Okay, let's take a look at the Sphinx.
Yeah, the erosion of the Sphinx, especially in a desert climate.
Okay, now here's the Sphinx. Let's take a look at it.
Hey T, you gotta mute yourself.
Okay, I don't know if
Can you guys hear me?
Capturing the right one. Yeah.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, wrong screen. Okay.
I can't hear you. Just joking.
Okay, wait a minute. Let me try here again. Shoot. Okay, I have to get rid of another window. Google screen sharing is very iffy and dumb. Doesn't work so good. All right, now let me try again. Now remember what I said about, there we go. No? Yes, now I get that. Okay.
Yeah,
Now,
I see it.
here's the Sphinx. It was carved out of sedimentary materials. And this thing was once covered with a smooth surface all around the outside. It was probably glossy. It was so smooth and covered with mortar. As you can clearly see, it has eroded like crap. Now that's the Sphinx. Why was the Sphinx so heavily eroded? And that boulder I showed you which was covered over a period of tens of thousands of years likely, according to Uniformitarianism. Why did it not erode? Why are its corners still so very short?
Awesome.
See,
A question I can answer. Okay, good. Let me answer that. The Sphinx, you're right, it has eroded terribly. That's definitely an example of what erosion would look like over a long period of time. The thing with the boulder that you showed, the inclusion, the xenolith, not a xenolith, I'm sorry, the boulder inclusion with the hard edges. The thing is, when I asked you, and this is why I think this is what was important, I asked you where that was and what kind of material that was. And you, if you could find that out, I would be interested in knowing. The difference is that geologists don't say that sedimentation can happen very rapidly. They don't say that's not true, that doesn't happen.
Can I just say something, by the way?
that rock is quartzite.
You said, I'm sorry, I'll let you finish, but you said that if he found something, you'd be interested in finding. That's a bald-faced lie. You would not even be interested, no matter how much proof that is shown to atheists. They're not interested.
Okay, so now that he is done poisoning the well, dang it, I forgot my point.
The rock is quartzite. Joe.
Sure. The rock itself that was included?
That rock is quartzite.
What about the layers around it? Because that seems to be the bigger issue, right? Because how can those layers happen over thousands of years?
Without the rock eroding around it, yeah.
Definitely. The thing is that sedimentation happens very rapidly all the time. It happens on the coasts of America. Yeah. When you said that they were thousands of years apart, you said that that's what uniform. That it would be really important to know if that's actually the case for the picture that you showed. Is that what they said?
I think that's an important thing that you just hit on, that if you agree that sedimentation can fall at a rapid rate, then how are you going to differentiate between it happening at a rapid rate and it taking a long time for these layers to come down?
Awesome, true empiricism. Very good point. Very good point. One of the ways that you can show that is that some sedimentary layers are laid down in different ways. Like Ordovician sedimentary layers, a lot of them are laid down through metamorphic processes. And so you'll see on the edges of certain layers of rock, you'll see obvious examples of this rock going underneath intense heat, almost reaching metamorphic levels. And so you'll see like pebbles, you'll see the material it looks clearly heated up. And then all of a sudden you'll have like sandstone or something right on top of it, or shale right on top of it. And none of that metamorphic evidence is on that shale, on that sandstone. So it's clear that this was laid down at a time well after the previous level was laid down, because if it was laid down rapidly right on top of that previous Ordovician level with the metamorphic rock pebbles and stuff, you would also see the same type of intense heat signature on the edge of the shale. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, nonsense. Water sedimentation takes place in water, which is the natural coolant.
Oh, that's sedimentation, but I just mentioned metamorphic.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of controversy about metamorphic rocks. In fact, it's not even proven that any rock in this planet is metamorphic. Did you know that? I know that you think that the secular geologists have this idea all wrapped up, and metamorphic, the idea of metamorphic rock is proven. It's not proven. What they have is an idea of how it was formed, metamorphosis. They haven't proven that rock is metamorphic. I'm going to argue with you that metamorphic rock probably doesn't even exist. It was formed by what you might call, well, or rather, not that it doesn't exist, but that a lot of rock that's claimed to be metamorphic is probably not metamorphic. And the reason that some secular geologists often argue for, well, this is metamorphic, is because if it happened during the flood of Noah, it can't be metamorphic. See, that's the problem.
I see. Well, if you have a problem with the title metamorphic, that's fine. What you still haven't addressed is the fact that this layer of rock has a heated top. It has pebbles that show signs that it was heated to a very high and extreme level. And this isn't at all found.
Tell me what shows that it was that strata in which that rock was laying?
You can't fight against God forever.
Extreme heat.
Wait.
What shows? What shows that the strata, which you're saying the strata on top of that rock that buried were under extreme heat?
Yeah, you can see that one layer of strata has like a line that clearly demonstrates that it went under extreme heat. If you don't want to accept metamorph, I'm sorry.
How so? How does it demonstrate that it was subjected to extreme heat?
Like it has signatures of like being burnt and stuff. Like what scientists can do is they can go into a laboratory and put rocks under extreme heat.
Okay.
And see what the rocks look like after that extreme heat.
Okay.
They go, okay, this is what it looks like under extreme heat. They go out to nature and they see, wow, there's this layer of rocks that look exactly like what they would look like if they were under extreme heat. And then all of a sudden you have this layer of sandstone or of mudstone or of shale or of whatever that's right on top of it. Something that just could not form at the same time as this one layer of rock that went underneath.
Great. So here's what happened, Joe.
Can I finish my thought really quickly, and then you can go ahead and respond if that's okay? Thank you. Okay. So you have this layer that went underneath extreme heat. It shows all the signs that it went underneath extreme heat. And then you have a layer that clearly didn't undergo extreme heat right on top of that layer. Now, the reason why this is important is that it implies that the bottom layer had to have cooled. It had to have cooled enough so that when you put the top layer on that bottom layer, it wouldn't have been affected by the same amounts of extreme heat that the bottom layer affected. If you don't want to accept metamorphic rock, I don't know exactly how to argue against that. I mean, if you won't accept it, I don't see a reason why I should argue for you. But the clear point is that this stuff was extremely heated, and then it cooled, and then the layer was put on top.
Well, built into what you said is the rebuttal to your own argument. Your argument actually shoots itself in the foot. And the reason it does is because there's a clear, distinct boundary between these two strata. Okay, that's the thing. That's produced by moving water. That's a hydrologic fact. So,
but I just explained that. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, that means that the strata that you're claiming was subjected to extreme heat was not subjected to extreme heat. The materials in it may have been transported from one place on the earth where they were subjected to extreme heat during the flood of Noah and deposited where they are after they had been subjected to extreme heat, formed in a strata, and the strata above it formed almost at the same time right above it. The proof of this is the clear, distinct boundaries between those strata, because you don't get clear, distinct boundaries over long deposition, Joe. That's the rebuttal for your argument is built right into your own argument. It can't.
Yeah, but that seems to have a problem for your argument against the strata with salt, because salt falls.
No, now you're moving the goalpost, Joe.
No, I'm not. I'm
what kind of salt?
And now everyone's going to jump on me about how I need to believe in God.
Joe, I want to finish what I'm saying.
Sure, go ahead.
The rebuttal to your argument was built right into it, and you said clear boundary. You didn't say clear boundary, but clear demarcation. You alluded that you can see clearly that one strata ends and another begins immediately upon it. Okay, so now the problem is that strata form one on top of the other virtually at the same time. There's no geologic age between them. That's the problem for you. That means that one strata.
No, that's your
was-
contention.
No, that's a fact, Joe. That's a geologic fact. I've provided in the beginning of this hangout 24 science papers from the journals that demonstrate that it's been observed that
only 24?
Yeah, I could probably find 3 million if you like, Joe. Does that satisfy you? Would 300 billion do it for you? What about 3 trillion zillion cajillion? Would that do it for you, Joe? No, sorry, it won't.
No,
It
actually,
doesn't matter.
300
Joe,
billion.
let me finish. It wouldn't matter how many I provide. I only need one.
I just disagreed with you. But,
So I only need one. So the problem, Joe, is that I want to make sure you understand my argument. The clear, distinct boundary between the two strata proves there is no geologic time in between them. And because that's so, that means your idea that the one strata being subjected to extreme heat and then another came along and was deposited later is false.
But you just, I mean, it had to have done, I mean, I explained why it had to have clearly been subjected
to... materials in that strata show the sign of having been subjected.
I just want to be clear, you guys all hear him interrupting me whenever I respond.
Joe,
right?
Here's the problem, Joe. You don't care about what evidence. You care about what you believe. And Joe,
I see. I just gave...
Joe, that you argue that the whole strata, where it is in situ, was subjected to extreme heat.
I gave you an argument.
And I'm telling you that the materials in that strata were subjected to extreme heat and deposited where they are after they had been subjected to extreme heat. And the proof of that...
can I respond to that, please?
And the proof of that is that the one strata forms on top of the other without geologic time in between them. Therefore, your argument is false because these two strata, one of them which you claim was subjected to extreme heat as it is in situ, was not deposited at a different age and time from the one above it. And the absence of erosion between them and the absence of gradation from one of them into the other is proof that there is no geologic time in between them. And so your argument falls flat on its face.
Okay, can I respond now? Okay, so my response is that the fact that, I mean, to say that you can't have salt dissolved and taken away, would you let me finish my, I mean, I knew you were going to interrupt me.
Your response to this strata, which you claim...
Let me explain, let me give you the response before, okay.
Move the goalpost, Joe.
Everyone, it's clear that he is interrupting me because he knows the force of my argument.
Joe,
and
you said you
can... Well, I'm actually interested in hearing...
Well, he can say it, but listen, Joe. You're making an argument. You said you were going to give a rebuttal.
You don't even know what argument I'm going to make.
Joe, you said you were going to give a rebuttal to what I just said about...
I am, but you won't let me.
Joe, you said you would give a rebuttal to the argument I just made about that boulder in that strata, which you have not examined.
Wait a minute. I've asked you for the information on that, and you won't give it to me.
And then, Joe... instead of doing that, you're off talking about salt again. Where's the rebuttal to the argument I made about that boulder in those strata?
Well, wait a minute. I thought we were talking about the sign of clear, clear, like high temperatures in between.
No,
I thought we were talking.
I just rebutted your argument. You said you were going to...
And I'm responding to your rebuttal. Why can't I respond to your rebuttal?
Because that's not related to this boulder in strata.
Okay, so I just want to, I mean, if you're going to, I mean, if your response to me telling you you're wrong is to go back to talking about a topic that you brought up,
no, it's the same
minutes ago and act as if that's not.
So you said you were
that's very disingenuous, Steph. It's very disingenuous on your part.
You said you were going to rebut what I just said about that boulder in those.
But you won't let me.
No, you're talking about salt. Are you going to rebut what I said, or are you going to talk about salt?
Okay, what I mentioned about that boulder, which I guess you didn't hear earlier when we were talking about it, is that geologists have no problems with sedimentation being laid down rapidly in certain circumstances. The way you figure out whether or not it's a specific circumstance, what occurred, is you find out what the layers were made. You know what the boulder is made out of. You know it's made out of quartz, which is what you mentioned. But you haven't told me what the sedimentary layers around it are made out of, nor have you told me where it occurred. which is very important to answer that question.
It would
But
be
I
in
mean,
uniformitarianism. It's not, Joe, because the strata have a clear, distinct boundary. So your idea, it doesn't hold any water. There's
okay,
no geologic
strata,
time between them.
exactly, because it's perfectly fine in geology for some strata to be laid down rapidly.
Mhm.
I told you that already.
Right. So where's the erosion between them, and where's the gradient?
Okay, and then I brought up, I mean, it's like we're summarizing what just happened over 20 minutes. And then I brought up, because someone else asked about it, I brought up the fact that there are layers where it's clear that they were laid down at different times. And I brought up the fact that there are layers that show rock that was heated up to extreme levels of heat. You could see it in the rock. You could see it. Oh, okay. You could see
But
it
even
in
that
the
doesn't necessarily prove anything, though. Even if you're going to try to say that there are certain patterns that were heated, I mean, anything could explain that. A comet could have came in. There could have been some sort of environmental factor with the heat under the Earth. There could have been all sorts of things that could explain the same thing. So you don't really have a way to differentiate between these layers coming down fast or as to whether or not they're heated. It seems to me like what you're really offering is conjectural.
No, because like I said, scientists have went into the lab and seen what rock looks like when you put it up to extreme heat.
And I explained that rock was subjected to heat somewhere else and deposited here.
Every time you interrupt me, I'm going to take that as you knowing you're wrong. That's what I've decided.
I just want you to, if you're going to rebut me, you need to stay on topic.
True empiricism, am I going off topic?
I think that he has answered you. I don't really see where it is that you're like arguing from, Joe, and that's just the honest truth. I mean,
the
thing also is that no matter how much.
Oh, I'm an atheist, so I'm not going to take evidence. Okay, you got me there.
No, I was going to say that you don't believe in a supernatural realm either way. So
okay.
Every single piece of proof that he gives you is going to be. I mean, do you think that?
Here's the proof he gave me. He showed me a picture of a rock, and he hasn't been able to. He said it layered in sedimentary strata. He doesn't even know where it's from. He just went and found a picture on a creationist website in order to.
No, it's not on a creationist website. But
you should be embarrassed.
Joe, the point of what I made when I brought up this boulder was the edginess of it, its sharp edges.
And I answered you already.
Which proved that it cannot have been subjected to the environment of the surface of the Earth for thousands of years. It would have eroded.
Okay, what was my answer to you saying that?
And I said, then this demonstrates that this boulder was buried rapidly in all of these strata. Now, or do you agree that it was buried rapidly?
Okay, I told you, this is going to be like the 5th time I've said this. I told you that this is a natural process, that sedimentary layers can be laid down quickly. And, I mean, I don't know, I mean, to say that extends to every single rock layer around the world is asinine. And the reason why it's asinine is the example I gave, which you apparently don't want to respond to, which is kind of telling.
Okay, so in relation to this boulder, then you would agree with me, my premise.
I already did. This is going to be the 5th time that I've agreed with you.
Okay, good. So we agree on that. You acknowledged that this boulder was buried rapidly, and that was my point.
Okay, so, and then I said that to extend that to every single geologic process around the globe doesn't make sense because, and then I mentioned the Ordovician layer showing a clear example that was heated up, and I mentioned that heated up layer had to have had time to cool down in order for another layer to go on, a layer that wasn't affected by that heat. And your response to that was, well, that could have been deposited by a giant flood. It could have happened at another time, deposited at a giant flood, and then the other layer could have landed on top of that. And I was going to bring up, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, if you're going to look at it from the standpoint of a creationist, then of course, I mean, it could make sense from a creationist standpoint because the Bible talks about how the fountains of the deep they broke open. So there could have been all sorts of geological events that were taking place with
Totally.
magma, and you'd have the heat and you have the water cooling it down. So you have what you need from a biblical accounts to explain that heat and to explain the cooling of the layers.
Well, the issue with that is that when you have cooling underneath water, which Neff mentioned earlier that water it helps a lot with the cooling down of a temperature of something. The issue with that is that when you have something cooled down rapidly under like a aqueous-like setting, you're going to have cracks. You're going to have a signature. You're going to be able to see that occurred, but we don't see that in these rock layers that I'm talking about.
So Joe, how long do you think it took to cool down?
Every time I bring it up, I get
well, let's get some details out of you. How long do you think it took to cool down that stratum before the next one was deposited on top of it?
I mean, I'm not sure. It had to have been like an amount of time for that strata. I mean, it depends on where it is. This is why it's important to know about these specific places.
Well, how much time?
It depends on where it is. It depends on what the strata on top is laid down.
Well, how much time could it have been, Joe?
It depends. I mean, it could have been a couple of days. It could have been thousands of years. It depends.
Thousands of years? No.
It could have been. Why not?
No, but because I'll say it again. Because we have a clear, distinct boundary.
By the way, I was finally getting to my point, and you interrupted me. I just wanted to make sure everyone is aware of that.
Joe, because we have a clear, distinct. Well, you're making claims, and then you want to bypass them. You say that it took time for that one to cool, and the next one deposit on top of it is somehow squeezed in there, evidence of uniformitarianism, and that's what I'm trying to address now. The problem for you, again, I'll say it, this is about the 9th time I've said so.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So I'll write it down, too.
The fact that we have a clear, distinct boundary between them demonstrates there is no geologic time between them.
But that goes against what flood layers actually look like if you look into geologic.
No. Flood layers, flooding produces.
I'm going to send you some paleo flood articles so you can see what flood layers
here on the screen. This is I don't know if you've seen this video before, Joe, but this is a PhD turns from atheism to Christ on this.
Like in the video, that would be kind of neat. If like halfway through the video, he's like, "Wait a minute."
Joe, are you saying that strata can be laid down? And then, over a period of thousands of years, there will be no. Are you saying that you're acknowledging that a strata requires rapid deposition? Is that what you're saying? Are you saying that?
It depends on which strata. It depends on which location in the Earth, and it depends on what processes are involved.
What process can create a strata over thousands of years?
What is it in a?
Wait, I have a suggestion. Sorry.
Okay, in a arid desert-like setting, you have lots of sandstone deposited over time. Also, in the setting where, when I bring up the salt thing, it's not water, Joe. In an arid-like area where you have a deposit, where you have where you have wind action, over time things can be laid down. It makes more sense because if it was laid down immediately afterwards, it would have the same type of extreme heat signatures that we see on layers below.
Joe, do you know that sandstone forms because of mineralized water? It doesn't form. Dry sand will never make a stone.
Okay, and the other way is through salt deposits you have several.
Let's address this thing you said about sandstone.
Okay, I messed up about sandstone. My bad, Evan.
Okay, right.
Got me there, even though you don't know what slick insides are.
Right.
But anyways,
sandstone requires mineralized water. Okay, so I'm back to my question. Can you give me an example of a strata that is capable of forming over thousands of years?
Yes, the several meters of salt deposits found all over the world.
Okay, I explained how salt can form.
You explained how a certain type of salt can form, but not this type of salt that I'm talking about.
Salt does not constitute a strata. Salt is.
I'm sorry?
Salt does not constitute a strata.
Okay, there's several. No, this is the thing, and we're talking about geologic time, how uniformitarianism could show that geologic time occurred. When you have several meters of salt all around the world, not the salt rock deposits that you're talking about, not salt pluming up from underneath the ground. I'm talking about places in central Michigan, places near the Mediterranean, places near the, I want to say the Alps, but I might be thinking of something else.
And how
And
do you
also
know that it formed
places,
over thousands of years?
because salt is water soluble. It immediately gets dissolved by water. It could not have been laid down through the type of
Okay, so where is this salt? Is it down in the
the
geological?
Salinas salt. Yes, look
Is
up the
this near
Salinas
this-
salt. It's in central Michigan.
Is it how deeply is it in the earth? How deep?
It's about over half a kilometer.
Half a kilometer deep. Okay, and so how does this half a kilometer deep salt demonstrate that it was formed over thousands of years?
Because salt is water soluble.
I addressed the salt deposit.
Salt couldn't. Okay.
Salt
Can
rock.
I answer? Okay, everyone.
Salt. Are you
Please,
saying that
is
salt
he interrupting me every time I'm about to answer him?
Joe, we're trying
No.
I'm trying to keep
He's
you
not.
on tune.
Okay,
No.
I must be crazy then. Sorry, guys.
Hey, I just want to say, he, the guy with the red cross, just what I want to tell you. 2 Peter 3, man.
And Joe,
Peter
I'm
three.
trying to keep you on point. You said salt.
Freaking philosophers.
Salt requires salt can't form that way. I'm saying salt rock doesn't erode. Just all
Everyone-
at once. It doesn't.
To be clear,
dissolve
he
in
keeps
salt
on wanting to
water,
talk
right?
about a different type of salt that I'm talking about.
You're talking about salt mixed with other materials, not solid salt, right?
Why don't you let me tell you what I'm talking about
Is
instead of
that
just
what you're
talking
talking
over me? I'm talking. The Salinas salt deposit is mixed with dendritis and other clear examples of what you would find in an inland sea. It's also found with fully formed coral.
So that can be.
Coral, if you
Why couldn't that be created by the flood, Joe?
because it's fully formed coral in a ring around the Salinas salt,
Mhm.
that would have been destroyed in the immediate flood, especially in a especially in a flood that would move entire beds of rock strata that you said was moved underneath sandstone and mudstone in my example earlier. If that can happen, then we wouldn't be able to see the type of coral formation and the type of coral that are fan coral that are not disturbed. We wouldn't have a layer of whole bunch of sedimentation laid down rapidly, and then one layer where salt was able to slowly collect with evaporites and with other microfossils that are associated with the sea, and with fully formed coral reefs, and then layers of more strata.
Okay, so
That
are
shows
you
the
saying?
geologic time, and the fact that that salt wasn't dissolved in a worldwide deluge. I'm sorry.
Do you know how many
So let
hundreds
me-
of thousands of brine is released into the sea and Antarctica every year during wintertime? There's hundreds of thousands of tons of brine that get released into the ocean floor, and that doesn't usually surface till a long time afterwards.
And-
So there is
I know what you're
a
talking
lot of
about,
salt in the ocean at the ocean floor that
Mhm.
that can be used here at the same time. If you get what I'm saying.
There's also another.
I can answer that, but Neff's going to interrupt me and not let me answer it. So.
There's another possibility, and that is that during the flood of Noah, salt and coral were moved, transported from one place to another, and deposited. That there's no reason in the world that can't happen during the flood. So as it's I think evolutionists, uniformitarianists have this false understanding about the flood, or false idea about the flood, is that it would have mixed everything up so evenly, but that's not true. Remember, as the flood is
That's not what I said, by the way.
the flood originated from the mid-oceanic ridges. That's where the majority of the water that laid the sediments on this earth came from. And so you have water moving horizontally away, east and west, away from the mid-oceanic ridge. Now, as it's doing this, it's moving and hits the continents. It's moving materials that are in one place on the continent. It's going to deposit them in different places. Water moves in streams, by the way. It can pick up 1 million tons of something in one place and deposit it as a stream or a poolage in somewhere else and be deposited. And at the same time, since we're talking about a cataclysmic event, it disturbed the entire topography of the Earth, okay, the geomorphology. And so it's no problem at all for the flood of Noah to rip up corals from one place and bury them somewhere else, even with salt. I don't see any reason for that. In fact, if that salt is
the salt would have dissolved if it was picking up whole coral reefs and putting it somewhere else. That salt would have dissolved.
If it's rock salt, it's not going to dissolve immediately.
It's not rock salt though, which is a different type of salt that you were talking about. That has nothing to do with the type of salt I'm talking about.
It's not now, but it is
and it not rock salt. Go ahead. Sorry.
Joe, you can't just point your finger at every piece of salt you find in the earth and say it can't have been created by the flood.
Or that
it had.
I said specific places.
Or that it had to have been created by thousands of years. You know, as True just pointed out, there are places on this earth that dump lots of salt into the water, oceans.
And I can answer him, but you wouldn't let me answer, which is what I mentioned earlier, by the way.
The point I'm really trying to make is that during the flood of Noah, there would have been massive streams of water moving all over the earth, and a stream of water can be known to pick up one material and deposit it in another place.
And that would have dissolved water. That's not the same type of action that you're talking about, true empiricism. You won't let me answer you.
Joe, here's the thing. It doesn't matter if it was dissolved. It still gets deposited. No,
yes, it does.
If the materials in the water and other materials that the salt is in are buried by other sediments that are coming over behind them and bury them, you could find exactly what you're talking about created in 5,000 places.
You would see a lot of mud in the area, and you don't.
Mud?
You would see a lot of dried mud amongst the salt in the type of action that you just described.
Sediments. Sediments are not all mud.
They're not, but in the process that you just described, in order to try and explain why this salt is still there, you would see lots of mud and other types of debris from the type of action that
it's buried in sediments.
Listen, here's what true empiricism, what you're describing is...
I want a little more information. Is this salt pure salt? Is it free of...
No, it's not.
Okay. Great. So why can't...
I gave you a specific formation, by the way, to look up. You haven't looked it up?
Tell me why it can't be that chunks of salt rock was eroded and broken apart as it was moving during the flood and fell in one place and was buried by their sediments. Why can't that have happened, Joe?
Because it's mixed with a bunch of microfossils that are associated with plankton in an inland sea. It also, it has dendritis in it. It also has the coral reefs ringed around it, obviously in situ. The way it's very... but I really want to bring, because true empiricism brought up a common retort, which I think is a bit more sophisticated than what I'm hearing right now. He brought up the fact that there are clear indications that brine is being pumped out by the ocean. What you're talking about is when brine of a different mixture come into contact with each other, and when the interface is stirred, salt is deposited, and this can happen underwater, definitely. The problem is that this is called it's called a Romp's mechanism. The problem is that in the turbulence, the salt should contain it should contain lots of quarts of mud and other impurities. And in other parts of the salt is relatively pure. The biggest contaminants are evaporate minerals.
May I ask you something really quick?
Well, really clear. The salt.
I just want to see whatever you're reading off of. Can you send the link here on the side?
Yeah,
so
definitely.
I can check it out?
Yeah.
The one thing that I want to point out is that salt, it consists of sodium and chlorine. That's typically what salt is. It consists of sodium and chlorine, and I
Sodium
believe
chloride,
the
yeah.
brine inside of the ocean
NaCl.
floor, methane is involved with that as well. But I understand that the brine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as my research has gone, brine, as it comes from the ocean into the ocean, as it goes into the ocean during the winter season in Antarctica, what basically happens is that helps for the circulation as well in the water. And the phytoplankton and the algal plankton in the ocean, this basically has something to do with that. There's also some effect with chemicals underground that helps to feed the algal plankton and the phytoplankton inside of the ocean as well. But I think that actually kind of fits with a direct sort of objection with what you're saying, because if something were to have happened, some sort of event were to have happened that had to do with this brine, I think it would have affected the phytoplankton and the algal plankton as well, and that might be where you're seeing that in that strata. Correct me if I interpreted what you were saying wrong, because it does seem like that's like something that would fall like perfectly in line with what you're saying.
Well, there's a couple issues with what you're saying. What you're saying, if I recall correctly, you were describing things that were coming out of Antarctica, right? Or you might have said the Arctic Circle. Either case, you're describing things that still require geologic time, because in the areas that I'm talking about, you would have to say that at one point in those areas they were the same type of ecological and environmental area as places like Antarctica or the Arctic Circle. Again, I forget which one you mentioned. The other issue is that there's coral. There are cold water and deep water coral, but those types of coral are not found in the areas that I'm talking about. We're talking about coral that's usually in a shallow area, because coral needs the sun to come down. Coral needs a certain type of temperature range in order to survive. And so that coral shows that it can't be the same type of process that you're talking about. But
well, if you got to think about it like this, though, if we're talking about a massive flood, even in the deeper part of the oceans, and we're thinking about how the fountains of the deep, they broke open, then where we're looking at this brine, where we're looking at the phytoplankton, if something big enough were to have happened like that, then it's coming up towards shallow ground wouldn't be. I think it would fall in line, if you get what I'm trying to say, because if you're having both of those fall in line with each other with a global flood and everything's getting mixed up, then you can see where the coral would fall in place with this brine as well.
Not in the way that it's mixed with the salt evaporites. The process you just described of the flood mixing things up in a certain way, that mixture is not the same process that where salt can be laid underwater, and that process would have dissolved all this salt. I mean, this is the issue that I'm seeing. We have salt someplace, and you're saying that there's one way that the salt can be accounted for, and that's this mechanism. What is it, Ropes mechanism? But if that mechanism were true, that coral shouldn't be there. And so when we talk about the coral, we talk about how the flood is an event, a catastrophic event that makes everything mixed up crazy. But that makes it so you can't rely on the Ropes mechanism anymore. Because if that new catastrophic flood scenario occurred, all of this salt would have dissolved. It wouldn't be there.
I don't get where you're coming from with that. You keep saying that the salt would have dissolved.
Yeah,
why would the salt have dissolved
soluble.
if the salt doesn't dissolve? No, I mean, we can see hundreds of thousands of tons of salt of brine at the bottom of the ocean, and there's even brine that's being used as circulation in the ocean. So where is it that you're saying that it's going to dissolve? I think you've gotten lost there.
But that's not with the coral that I'm talking about. It's not in with like fully grown coral reefs. Henry Morris calculated that coral reefs grow so many centimeters a year, and so after a couple meters, it's clear that at least 5 years of growth occurred. but we have thousands of meters of this fully grown coral in these areas with this salt. You're not going to find that kind of coral, especially the type of coral that I'm talking about, which is coral that's found in a shallow endless sea. You're not going to find that kind of coral associated with the mechanism that you just described, the mechanism where we have brine layer deposits flowing around the world. Also,
Joe, you will that salt was transported during the flood and deposited in that location.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what you're... Because you keep on saying that it wouldn't happen, but I'm not seeing where the connection is that it wouldn't happen.
Because
if we
of
have
the
the brine already, I understand that it doesn't happen normally, but if we're looking at a catastrophic event that's affecting the whole planet and everything's getting mixed up like that, then that would make sense.
But the coral would have been destroyed.
Especially buried. What about all the fossils? They weren't destroyed. They were created. You know, sediments bury things in situ, Joe, without destroying them all the time.
Yeah, that kind of burial would have dissolved the
salt was dissolved. That's why it's deposited where it is, Joe.
The salt was dissolved. Well, if the salt was dissolved, it wouldn't be in the several different places that I mentioned.
Water transports all kinds of things without destroying it completely.
Yeah, but water dissolves salt.
Right, and water can move semi-solid salt or salt, heavily concentrated salt in water.
But when you look at that type of
salt in the ocean, the ocean floor, the brine,
and you got solid salt again.
Okay, when you look at that kind of salt, you don't find the type of detritus and impurities that are found in the Salinas salt, in the salt down in Texas, and the salt that is currently being evaporated from the Black Sea today. The salt that's currently being evaporated from Salt Lake City, you don't find that kind of salt in the processes that you guys just described.
Joe, if that was rock salt that got eroded...
someone wants to be unmuted, Westcott.
And deposited in one place, I don't see any reason that the flood of Noah couldn't have done that. You're just claiming that...
I just gave you several reasons, man.
No, I don't see that as a reason why it can't have. Well, especially if we know that I know that salt is not sand. But, I mean, heck, the flood of Noah transported millions and millions of tons of sand from the Appalachian Mountains area to the American Southwest.
Sand
it formed the...
You're just talking about a different thing in order to...
in Navajo sandstone. I'm talking about water transports things. And I don't see any reason why the flood of Noah can't have transported that salt. You say it's pure...
It's water soluble. You know what water soluble means?
Yeah, how fast did it get? Where was it in the earth before it ended up where it is?
Where did the salt in the earth come from? Is that what you're asking?
No,
it was on inland seas.
Joe,
the inland seas with all the coral.
That's the Uniformitarianists' belief, Joe. But that doesn't explain the many salt formations that are in the earth, buried in sediments.
And I said that salt can form in several different ways. I agreed with you there. Me and True Empiricism were just talking about a different way that salts form, through Ronck's mechanism. Westcott's back. He probably wants to be broadcast.
So the coral that's found there, I don't see that as an argument against the flood, because the flood would literally bury a lot of coral where it sits, and it would also rip up coral and move it from one place to another and bury it there as well. So
do you see how that's not falsifiable? The flood would do both things, so you can't show that it's wrong.
The fossil records is all kinds of rapidly buried things, and it's got anomalies in it, like that boulder I showed you.
Is it rapidly buried in a water-soluble substance?
Can I put a couple of cents in words here?
Yeah, go ahead, please.
We're talking about the salt. I looked up this. It says evaporates of gypsum and halite rock salt, right? And they're showing the Michigan Basin with some reefs and all that. But it's so we're talking about surface salt, though, right? We're not talking about buried salt.
What do you mean by surface salt?
The salt is on top of the surface. It's not under the ground unless it's mixed, right?
That's a different. Can you send me a link to what you're talking about? Some of this salt obviously is exposed. That's how they found it.
I mean, that's the problem is we're trying to.
This is salt. Earlier, Neff asked me where this salt was. Specifically in central Michigan, there are several meters of salt buried a little bit. Thank you for the link, by the way. It's awesome.
Wait, you're talking about the Salinas salt.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about the Salinas salt amongst other different types.
Well, now wait a minute. Let's go back.
Well, what I'm doing when I'm looking at this,
yeah,
is I'm seeing from the top a geographic picture here, and what I can tell from it, it looks like that, you know, as it took a while for the sea floodwaters to drain off, and there's a lot of theories about it even taking longer in the North Americans. That's what that looks like. It looks like there was sea, you know, enough sea there for a while for it to build reefs, and then as it drained off, it left the salt behind. So that doesn't prove or disprove the flood in that particular instance. Except it does lean more toward the flood because that could have happened within a couple of thousand years that nobody was around. You know, that historically they weren't around. I mean, it doesn't take that long. You even said it could take. When you're talking about that,
I know where you're going. Definitely.
You say it would take it. You said it could have been recovered in a couple of days, which
it depends.
That doesn't go outside the flood perimeters either, as it takes several months
not at all.
Off.
I see where you're going with this, definitely. Not at all if it was found on top, which is, I mean, if it was found on top of all the layers that were supposedly laid down on the flood, absolutely, definitely.
But you were saying the salt below underneath the ground is mixed, which is what you said it would be mixed. If this type of salt would be mixed.
It would be
impurities
mixed.
in it, right? And it does have impurities in it, right? Is that
the salt halfway down, is specifically in the Salinas. It's a very good website you posted to, by the way. The salt underneath is the salt I'm talking about, because that's the salt that's in the layers that were supposedly laid down by the flood. And
salt underneath. I mean, I don't know. Could it have salted through or been? But what time of the flood was it laid down? It's not that very deep, is it?
Good night, everyone.
Good night, Israel.
It's not very deep, so I mean, it could have been, you know, several months into the flood when it was just mainly surface water swishing back and forth because of the tides. Right?
Where was the Solarian? The Solarian depends. It depends on which flood model you're talking about. Some people think that the Solarian and right down to the Cambrian were actually the early days of the flood. Other people think that it was a little bit later. It depends. Some people don't even. I mean, it depends on the issue. I'm going with. I believe Neff has a quote on his page that says, "For 1,800 meters down." That's what I'm going with, and this is within the 1,800 meters that he's talking about. But you're definitely right in that there is salt that is higher above, which is, itself can be more of an issue, because how can you have, I mean, if you have one layer, go ahead.
Well, I was reading, when I was looking this up, I was reading some Michigan salt problems that they have ran out of all the surface salt, and then there's all kinds of salt leaking out from underneath.
Yeah.
So even from 1,000, it's more likely the flood had to lay down the salt quickly before it had a chance to move on, because even if you're talking about thousands of years slowly building, it wouldn't have had time to accumulate. So even your scenario for thousands of years or millions of years of slowly being laid down,
why would it have
that water melts? You said that water melts the salt. Well, it dissolves in water automatically. Then the slow time would keep it from forming as well, according to your calculations.
Why? I don't.
Because you'd have rain water and flood water all flowing through there, and it would, as it's doing now, it's seeping out. So for it to accumulate as large as it did, it would have to been laid down very quickly.
Okay, I want to point out something, Joe. I want to point out something, Joe.
I have a response, Westcott, but
giving us a little bit of misinformation here. You said this whole salt deposit is solid. solid salt without any, materials mixed in with it. I'm reading
Did I
from
say
the
that, everyone? I said detritus and
yeah,
gypsum and
yeah,
microfossils.
you said it's salt. You said it's solid salt. Now that's misleading. And you said it
Okay,
was
I
not.
didn't say
You
that,
said it
everyone,
was
and I
not
think that that's
contaminated.
terrible that you're trying to say I'm being
You said it's
misleading.
not contaminated with stuff. It was solid salt. But
I
I'm
did
reading
not
from
say
this
that.
website about. Yes, you did say that, Joe. We all heard that.
I think you're
But
very,
I
very.
said
this
I
is
don't think you're
Joe.
very clear, Joe, with your description of the salt.
No, he said that it was solid
it
salt
would
and it
not
was
have
not mixed with
plastics, it would
impurities.
not have mud.
Said,
That's what
Joe,
it
now
said.
I'm talking. Wait, you've given us misinformation. You said it was
Okay.
solid salt and that it was not mixed with impurities. Now I'm going to read for you
And
just a
I
little
told
bit.
you what the impurities it
I'm
would
going to
not
read.
be mixed with.
I'm going to read from you just a little bit from this geology website that describes it. It says the great salt beds, named the Salinas salt beds, were deposited in the basin. In the central part of the basin, 2,300 feet of alternating salt, shale, and limestone beds have been penetrated in the Salinas, with 1,600 feet of rock salt. The salt. Let's see here. They say also.
Can you send me a link to what you're
They
talking
say
about?
it's the web page that Westcott provided.
Oh, okay, cool.
And it also says, now let me go a little bit further down. They say, in the Michigan basin grew until gypsum, amphitrite, and finally rock salt were precipitated on the underlying carbonates. The aggregate thickness of 600 meters of gypsum and salt accumulated in the basin, with one bed of salt nearly 150 meters thick. It would take a column of seawater nearly 1,000 meters deep to form a layer of 600 thick meter salt. Looks like now, great thickness of anhydrite and gypsum are also present. Okay, so now from this I glean two things, very important things. Firstly, you've given us misinformation by implying that this salt, it was solid salt and it was relatively pure salt. You implied it had virtually no impurities in it. What we're actually seeing here is that it's multiple layers of alternating salt and other materials. It's not as you described it, okay? And furthermore, the salt has other materials mixed in with it, and the thickest part of it looks like 150 meters thick of pure salt, so or nearly of contaminated salt actually, which has gypsum and anhydrite in it as well. So it's not as you described.
Which I mentioned all those things, by the way. Okay, so let me continue reading what Nev just said. The very next sentence that Nev doesn't leave that Nev left out is the deposition of this immense volume of salt took perhaps 15 to 20 million years and ended about 300.
That's what you believe.
The link I just
That's what you believe. Now, Joe, hold on. I want to make a point, guys. Hold on. This is really important. One more point. They state in this article it would take a column of seawater nearly 1,000 kilometers deep to form a layer of 600-meter thick salt. So how in the world can it have formed then? See, there's something else that did it. So,
wait, what?
Joe, I think it was disingenuous of you to say that this was nearly pure salt, virtually free of contaminants, and it was solid. And
can I make a bet with you, Nev? I bet you $10 that I didn't say that.
You have completely misrepresented this salt deposit.
$10.
You indicated that it didn't have contaminants in it.
In fact, Joe,
it didn't have and you specified mud contaminants and another thing, but
that's what I meant. Yeah.
But the way you worded it means that it made us. You were indicating that there were no contaminants at all.
That's right.
Yeah,
and, the contaminants would all depend on what was being moved by the floodwaters.
In fact,
not necessarily just mud itself, or when the salt began to settle.
Can I explain myself, or no? You guys are talking over me.
Joe,
But
in
he's
fact,
not going to let me explain myself, Westcott. I mean,
Joe, in fact, it was so disingenuous of you that I'm going to go back into this hangout, and later I'm going to extract that part of it where you describe this salt as nearly pure with virtually no contaminants and solid. And I'm going to make a video of it, and I'm going to put it on YouTube. And
even Westcott just said that I explained it. I mean,
and I'm going to show that you were disingenuous.
Okay,
Joe, here's
so-
what I suggest. The next time you want to debate evolution and creation or geology or even stuff, don't misrepresent the evidence.
I gotta ask something.
you can't respond?
I'll kick him now.
Where was the location of the this saline that he's speaking of?
So, that's in South America. But you see,
Well, that's the thing. He said that gypsum was involved.
Oh, that's in Michigan, the one we were talking about.
Right.
Well, here's the thing. Gypsum mixed with hot water. And he mentioned that the heat inside of one of the layers, gypsum and heat is basically a good mixture to make gypsum crystals. So Brazil, some of these places in South America, that's where you find most of these gypsum crystals. So if what he's saying is the case is true of this high concentration of gypsum and this heat, and we find a large variety of crystals in the direction that he's saying that this happened, that would be evidence of a flood.
Yeah, where's we get the geologic activity?
It's evidence of a flood anyway, because as he was saying, this salt supposedly dissolved, almost instantly when hit with water. And if that was the case, it couldn't accumulate over thousands of years without melting off. As it's
I think that's why he didn't answer my. I asked him on the side because I think he knew I was going to go with that, because that's a perfect mixture right there to make gypsum crystals.
Right.
Heat and water and gypsum, especially if you have a high concentration of gypsum. And most people know that that's where a high production of crystals come from. That's where a lot of crystals are mined, is in South America, and in the areas of the U.S. that you just mentioned.
Yeah. What burns me though is he completely misrepresented that salt deposit in Michigan. He said it was nearly pure solid salt, and is surrounded by a coral reef, and that's not the evidence at all. It's multiple layers of intermittent layers of different materials. It's with some layers of solid salt, thick, and some thinner. But the way he worded it was that this was one massive, big salt deposit with nearly pure salt, and he described it as nearly absent. I mean, nearly completely free of any contaminants. And that's just completely dishonest to misrepresent the evidence that way, because he wants to argue for uniformitarianism. Now, that salt, as true empiricism is pointing out, and Westcott has both pointed out, could have certainly been deposited by the flood. Multiple waves of material moving salt from one place to another, and it falls into a dip in the earth that's being covered with sediments during the flood, and more salt is being deposited, and more salt deposited by successive waves of material flowing over that area of the earth during the flood. And the reason that salt remains and the salt around it is no longer present is because that salt sank into a hole in the earth, a dip in the earth, a depressed area, and that's where it remained. The upper ground, which was not a depression, was continued to receive a higher volume of moving water and washed that salt away. The result would be a big salt deposit in a hole in the earth. And the flood of Noah can easily explain that. But it really chaps me to see an evolutionist come in here and misrepresent the physical evidence, describe it as one thing, and when we go to the web and investigate it, we find it's completely different from the way he's describing it.
Hey, Neff, have you ever looked in a mirror? Because you completely misrepresent everything you say.
No. So
Well, can you explain how he misrepresents that? Anything that he says?
Well, he was just been what Joe's been trying to tell him.
What is it exactly that he's been trying to tell him?
Well, what Joe said about the assault.
Well, what did he say about the
I heard
salt?
the conversation.
What did he say about the salt?
What Joe said about salt, you can rewind the video.
I'm going to. And I'm
What
gonna
I think we should be doing is the same type of thing we get in the comment section. I mean, a lot of the times atheists, they just side along with the person that agrees with their already held to views. But can you actually show or explain? We'll give you free time to express whatever agreement you have with Joe. Can you explain in any way at all how Nephilim Free was incorrect in what he said?
Nephilim Free completely misrepresented what Joe said. Nephilim Free implied that Joe was lying, and no, Joe tried to explain himself, but Neff just kept throwing accusations at him.
But that's a
So
very
let's get this square. Joe, I'll say it one more time, and then we're moving off to something else. Joe described that salt deposit as a solid salt deposit, virtually free of contaminants, surrounded by a coral reef. That is not what the evidence is. That's not.
I disagree with that.
Well, then you need to go to the web and look at the web page that Westcott provided, which provides a geological explanation, a description of it, because it does not match whatsoever the way Joe represented it.
Joe did not represent it like that.
We all heard Joe describe it as such.
Well,
Okay, so are you defending?
Yeah, but in so doing, he tried to cover himself by bringing up that there should be contaminants like mud in it, but he didn't explain that it already did have contaminants in it. They just weren't mud. So he was
clarifying.
He wasn't just misrepresenting. He was misdirecting.
That's a good call, Westcott.
So now you say that he didn't just misrepresent. He tried to misdirect with his mud dilution thing and some other thing. He said that salt should have in it if it's whatever. But
that's a good catch,
misrepresented the whole situation.
That's exactly right, Westcott. You caught him in another trick. That's exactly what he did. Exactly what you did. He misdirected the evidence, tried to cover it up. He tried to muddy up the picture of it by claiming that, well, if the flood had produced it, it should be full of mud. And the reason he did that was to imply that it's nearly all pure salt. And we find that it's actually not. And so that was, you caught him in another misrepresentation. I'm going to the kitchen to get a Coke. Be back in a minute.
But as you can see, it's not that hard. All you got to do is really look up the real information and see how the evolutionists twist and misrepresent the actual facts.
Well, Kyle,
unlike you creationists.
Yeah, unlike us, because we don't have to do that to prove our point. We tell it to you straight.
So, yeah, you guys just say God done did it.
Well,
Where do you get that? No one says that. Science was invented by Christians to figure out how God did it, so that because God wants us to figure out how He does things, so that we can build things like cars and bicycles and computers and other inventions by using the materials He left us on the earth that actually work together, amazingly work together. If this place was randomly put together, why does everything it's able to work together? If you think about it, it just that
well, why does the world work together? It's called the laws of physics.
Right.
You're not really saying anything, though.
That work together perfectly, and you can look, I can combine this if I do it just right, and come up with a material that's different from ever before, and use it for something else. I mean, how does all this stuff work together?
Westcott, may I respond to him? Yeah, I mean, the way that you respond to what we're saying here, Calhoun, I don't know if I said your name right.
It's Callahan.
Calhoun, whatever, I'll call you Cal, okay?
Sure.
The way that you just said or made that that allegation towards us, how we just say that God done did it, is kind of really the same thing that we could say to evolutionists. It evolved, and sort of the way that you just said, you know, the laws of physics.
That's actually how it happened.
Hold on.
It evolved.
Can I finish my statement, please? It's sort of like the same statement that you just said right there. The laws of physics just did it. So let's investigate this for a little bit then. Instead of us just making claims and allegations like that, let's just investigate it. Can you give a demonstration to where a motor can be produced through the laws of physics?
Look inside your car.
Obviously, you would acknowledge that it would take intelligence to be the cause to produce
you asked me
that
how
motor that
a
is inside
motor
of the car.
would work, according to laws of physics. Well,
That's not
Well,
what
you
he
know what
asked.
I meant
That's
by
not
what
what
I
he
asked
asked.
you. You know what I meant by what I asked you. I'm
restate the
asking you that if we're looking at things in nature, motors are found in nature like the bacterium flagellum.
Okay, well that's
Can
an
you
example
explain something
of
as
a motor naturally
with-
occurring.
well, you're just making that statement. You got to prove that it was made simply without the hands of creation, because based on our understanding, the thing that has caused the effect of motors has always been intelligence.
But how do you know that intelligence is there?
Because we create things.
The things that we find in nature, like motors, have only been known to come from intelligence. So based on our cause and effect, we know that these type of instruments that are produced have always come from intelligence. The cause of the effect of motors shows us that based on our previous knowledge, this is where this has come from. So the production of certain instruments that have only been known to come from intelligence are evidence and is an indicator of intelligence behind those things and a creator behind those. Now you're saying that physics just did it, or it just
Well, the
evolved.
laws of physics.
So
and
what you have to
matter.
do now, since we're going to remove that first cause that we know makes these things happen, makes these things become produced, you have to show how a motor can be produced without the influence of a creative intelligence.
It happened. It evolved over time.
But that's just like me saying God did it.
No, because I'm not implying a incredibly complex, being.
What is that supposed
I'm
to
not
mean?
violating Occam's razor.
How is that not violating? How are you not violating Occam's razor? Occam's razor is dealing with the option with the fewest amount of assumptions which should be chosen.
Yeah.
Now we know that
You're
it's not an
assuming God
assumption. We know that it's not an assumption to stand by our cause and effect that motors have always been produced by intelligence. That's just going by
That's an argument from ignorance.
that motors has been produced by intelligence. If we're going to go by Occam's razor, then there are far more assumptions. There are far more assumptions on your side than there are on ours, because where we have a demonstrable cause that can produce the effect of motors, you don't have anything. You just say it evolved.
Yeah, because it evolved is demonstrated.
Okay, well, demonstrate and prove how a motor is produced through evolution.
Okay, ask a biologist how it happened.
Okay, so basically, you don't know how it happened. You're going to go by faith, by what some man has told you.
No, I don't go by faith.
Look, they don't have an explanation.
We do have. Scientists do have an explanation.
No, they don't. What they have is they believe that it was a type 2 excretory port in a cell, but how the excretory port actually evolved and then got the flagellar motor, they don't have a clue. They just say it happened.
Well,
They don't have a model.
what's bad about that? What's bad about admitting that you don't know?
Because
There's nothing wrong with saying that you don't know, but there is something wrong with saying that you don't know when you do know. If we do know where motors can come from, and you dismiss that from your mind, there's a reason why you're dismissing that from your mind, because you're obviously in denial of that. You can't say honestly that you don't know. Mankind cannot say honestly that they don't know where motors come from, because every single one of us objectively know that motors have always been the end result of creative intelligence. That's not a matter of opinion. That has nothing to do with religious beliefs.
But no,
that is
we
an objective
don't
fact.
know that fact.
Well, we don't know. So you're saying that you don't know that motors have been produced by men?
I do know that men have built motors, but we don't know that all motors are only built by intelligence.
What are men? What are men? Do they possess creative intelligence?
I would assume they do.
So it took the men with creative intelligence to produce a motor. First of all, you just have to acknowledge that we do know that. You just acknowledge that right now by accepting that. Do we have another demonstration to where this can be produced?
Evolution.
Okay, well, give us a demonstration.
Okay, look at the flagellum of a bacteria.
Yeah, that's a motor. That's the point. How did that motor come into existence without the influence of creative intelligence?
I don't know the exact method or way it did, but I know it evolved.
So here's the thing. You don't know the exact method or way that it was produced. You do know where it has been produced by creative intelligence, but you're going to dismiss creative intelligence and accept the answer that you can't even explain yourself, that you don't even know. Why is that?
It's because you believe in.
Why is what?
Not what.
Why is it that you're rejecting something from your own admission right now that you know was the result of creative intelligence? You acknowledge that alternative right there.
But I don't know that.
When it came to evolution, when it came to evolution,
creative intelligence.
You speak about that as if it's a fact. You can't explain how it could have happened. You don't know a way to justify that method, but that is what you're going to hold to. And
if I did the research, I could find out.
That is based on knowledge. I'm sorry?
If I did the research, if I went to college for a number of years, I can find out how bacteria flagellum came about, how it evolved.
No, neither does any scientist. You can take that right all the way to the bank. What true empiricism is talking about, no, any scientist you ask to present you evidence, people who are knowledgeable about this in the field, go into semantics, and they go into hiding in semantics, and they cannot explain you step by step. Even though your knowledge may not be as compared to theirs, they cannot tell you. They all come down to saying this just happened. This is the way that this happened. I mean, I'm certainly not a scientist or even very biologically knowledgeable, but I've talked to people who are and who claim to be, and they just come to the same conclusions from what I can understand.
So what you're actually mistaken there to begin with anyways. I mean, what Neff said was correct. The only thing that they're going at is they're speculating based on homologous proteins that had to do with the type 3 secretory system. That the type 3 secretory system had a sort of needle-like instrument that was for injection. The base looks similar, therefore they assume that the rest of the motor can be produced if you give it time. That's it. That is the whole story right there. That is the whole story right there.
Mutations
but,
happen all
you need
the time.
to pay attention to your own approach towards this, though. You, from your own admission, understand that motors are produced by creative intelligence.
No,
you know that already.
Motors
You've acknowledged that earlier.
You've
negated that to hold to a faith that you're holding to, that you're leaning on.
I don't hold a faith.
Well, that's exactly what you're doing.
You
don't even know.
You have to go to college to learn it.
You don't even know.
That means you're believing somebody else.
Yeah, you don't even know. You can't even give an explanation for this evolutionary process, but you're leaning on the knowledge of another man that you can't even specify. I mean, you can't even give me a scientist's name, but you...
Thunderfoot. You part JF?
Well, can you explain to me what Thunderfoot has said to you?
Well, he hasn't said anything directly, but I'm sure he probably has an idea.
So his idea, you're going to go with his idea rather than what we know can produce motors.
And he's pretty sure that he
God created a motor. You don't know. You don't even know he existed.
Well, yeah, of course I do. Let me tell you something. Motors and instruments that have only come from creative intelligence, that is a direct inference and a direct knowledge of creative intelligence. So yes, the things that we're finding inside of nature, when you find motors, the very first indication of that is that it was created, because motors have only been known to be produced from intelligence. So the direct evidence is there when you're looking at motors. That is, there's no disputing
look
that.
at
The
man-made
question
motors and
here,
tell
the
that they
question
were made
here
by
is
men.
there an alternative
If we
that
look
can
at a
produce a
bacteria from the
motor?
gem, we don't know if a intelligence created it. We don't know, but it's foolish to assert or assume that one did until you know how it came about.
Let
See,
me
what-
interject something here. What I'm hearing from you is faith statements.
I don't
over-
make a faith statement.
That was a faith. You know,
I do not make faith statements.
Well, here's what it's.
You don't even know what a faith statement is, man.
Because you
No,
say
Aaron
you
Raw.
don't-
Ron Raw
Wait a minute.
thing.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. It's faith because you say you don't know how it was formed, but you believe that nature produced it over and above what true empiricism has pointed out, which is that our observable, our common observation.
But I can
common
observe
experience.
nature.
Let me
I can't observe a God.
Let me finish. Is that our common observation experience is that intelligences create motors, okay? But what instead are saying that you believe it happened even though you don't know of an explanation for it or anything. And that's just not scientific way of thinking. If you're going to claim, if you want to argue what you believe over what we believe, that's one thing. But don't go around saying it's scientific, okay, or science. Because what you just described is faith, not science.
Use the word science because you believe in creationism.
No, I have evidence.
Creation is the most anti-science thing out there.
No, actually, evolutionism is anti-science. But no, I'm going to point out something.
Evolution is science.
Hold on.
To Kyle's.
Back to geology for a minute. I want to show something. That's what this hangout was about.
Hold on. Hold on. What's his name? Kalakwahan.
Oh my God! It's Callahan.
I'm sorry,
I'll spell it out for you guys in the chat.
Do you ever ask questions regarding what you hear from Thunderfoot and all these people?
I always ask questions. I'm a skeptic.
So you ask questions.
Why do you think I became an atheist?
Well,
I was asking
let me give you something to be skeptical about. Let me give you something to be skeptical about, and that is the idea that the surface of this Earth has been eroding for millions and millions of years. Do you guys see a mountain on your screen? Are you seeing a mountain?
Yeah, we see it.
I see a mesa.
That's Mount. I hope I can pronounce it right. Roraima. It's in South America, and you'll notice something very interesting about it. Firstly, it's claimed to be many millions of years old. But now if you look at the edges of that mountain, boy, it's sharp. Mighty sharp edges. Something's wrong with this picture. Let me show you another picture of it. Let's see, have you look at this one. There's another picture of it. Now, funny thing is, it's got sharp edges going all the way around it. The thing is, this mountain cannot have been exposed to erosion for millions of years.
Yeah, it did. That's how it formed that way.
No, it can't be, because it would have been rounded. It would be rounded off. It
no,
would
it
not
wouldn't.
be.
Not necessarily.
Yes, erosion does that to rocks.
Can I put something out really quick, Evan?
Yeah.
Kyle, you said recently that the reason why you became an atheist is because you ask questions, you're a skeptic.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that what you're showing, I want, hopefully Neff's audience is going to be able to point this out and really look at this. What you're doing, Kyle, is everything that's being said to you, you disagree with it because of an emotional opinion.
No.
When you're presented with, for example, a motor, you'll acknowledge, yeah, creative intelligence produced that. You negate it, you reject it for no reason, but then you accept something that maybe some other scientist said because they have an idea on it, and because that idea agrees with you. Now, what Neff is trying to do here is Neff is trying to explain something.
Exactly express what I'm thinking doesn't mean that's what I'm thinking.
You can say whatever you want to me after I'm finished saying this, okay, please. What Neff is trying to do here, what I'm trying to do here, is explain why what we're holding to is more superior than your emotional reasons by pointing physical things out. He's showing this mountain, and I brought up the bacterium flagellum. I think that what's going on here is the direct opposite of what you're trying to claim about your own position right here. And maybe you should think about that for a second and consider how everything that you've adopted, that you've inherited, this mindset from these atheists here online, is directly false, then you're guilty of the exact thing that you're criticizing us of.
Okay, that's all completely untrue. Hello?
Well, what we're
Oh, yeah, I
showing
wanna
you
point out
is
something.
observation. We're showing you observation, which you said you can't.
No,
you
you're
believe
just
in the
showing me you just
observation.
don't know
What we
how it
observe,
works, so you
we
assume that
observe-
God done did it.
what we observe is that this formation fits the narrative of the Bible that has never been proven wrong.
It fits the flood.
The Bible has been proven wrong almost every scientific statement it's ever made.
No, the Bible has scientific foreknowledge man could not have possessed.
Okay, for one, we know the Earth ain't flat.
But hold on, the Bible doesn't say the Earth's flat. But here's
Yes, it does.
no, it
Let me
doesn't.
pull up a few
I've read it quite a bit. I'm going to show you about this rock now. I said that this rock, this mountain, would have, if it had been subject to the Earth's environment, the wind and rain, for many millions of years, it would have rounded out and eroded down. It wouldn't have such clear, distinct edges. It wouldn't have this edginess over millions of years.
It depends on the crystalline structure of the rocks, the type of rock, the type of erosion it's experiencing, all sorts of other questions.
No, it wouldn't matter. It's rock and mountains erode. And erosion is a constant process on the Earth. Millions of years of erosion would have rounded this mountain out and worn it down. But it's not
necessarily true.
It is true. I showed you the Sphinx. The Sphinx has been eroded down to about, it's lost a great deal of its material, and it's in a desert, and it's only a few thousand years old. Now, what do you think?
It's millions of years old.
I got a question for you.
It's made of rock.
The
This
Sphinx is
mountain
not
here-
millions of years old. The Sphinx is
rock-
millions of
I
years
got a
old.
question for you, Callahan. If you can't feel something with your hands, do you believe it exists?
I know George Washington existed, even though I never touched him or saw
Well, that
him or
requires
heard him.
faith just to believe that.
Did you
No,
just say that the
that's not
Sphinx was
faith.
millions of years old?
What?
Huh?
Did you say, Kyle, that the Sphinx was millions of years old?
No, I think you said that. I heard you. I heard you say that.
He said it's not millions of years old.
I'm pretty sure you said that it wasn't, that it was millions of years old, Kyle. And if you said that,
the rock gets made
that you
from
do realize that
millions of
according to
years old, but
evolutionists,
it's not millions of years
according
old.
to
It's a few
evolutionists,
thousand years old.
according to evolutionists, we were here for mankind has only been here for a couple 100,000, maybe 100,000 years old, tops.
Okay.
If you believe Abraham Lincoln existed, that requires faith. We cannot
No, it doesn't require faith.
explain
It
why
just
that
requires evidence of its existence.
Well,
And we can look at pictures of Abraham Lincoln. We can look at speeches. We can look
how
at
do you
news
know they're not
articles.
photoshopped? How do you know those aren't falsified speeches?
So you're basically saying you have to prove that everything is 100% true, absolutely.
That's the direction you basically go to.
No, it has to be a preponderance of evidence.
So how do you know it's reliable evidence?
How do I know it's reliable evidence?
What he's trying to point out for you is that we have faith in everything. You have faith that the chair you're sitting in right now is going to support you. I mean,
I don't have faith. I have a confidence it will support me.
right, but that comes with faith.
Different wording.
It doesn't come with faith.
Well, listen to me explain. If you sit down in a chair that you've never sat in before, you have faith that the design is sturdy enough that it'll support you.
No, I have a confidence. I believe that a chair will support my weight because it's designed to standards that this chair will support my weight.
One of the definitions of faith is confidence in something.
That is faith. That's right. Confidence in something. Exactly true. Exactly. So the point is that I think you're repeating a lot of what you've heard from atheists, and I think I think you're using them as an excuse for not to believe in God.
What?
I think you use them as an excuse for not wanting to believe in God.
I don't use anything as an excuse to not believe in God. I just don't believe in God because I see no evidence to believe in God.
What about the chariot wheels at the bottom of the
You just ignore it. You ignore it and you restate the statements that you've heard from other atheists because you think that they're good statements, but they're flawed and many of them need some justification for.
Right.
And when you don't
Truthfully,
need any
What do you think
justification
you
for them,
guys
you
do
come
all
off
day?
as faith-based, and not the definition of faith that's based on confidence of something, faith with no reason whatsoever to believe in what you're saying. You're just holding on to your atheism and making the statements that you're making.
I don't hold on to atheism. I just don't believe.
You don't have any reason to be an atheist.
But atheism has to
I don't
be
have a
believed
reason
in
to be a
itself.
theist.
You have to believe there is no God.
No,
There
I
are more
don't believe
reasons
that
to
there
be
is
a
no
theist
God.
than
I
there are to
don't
be an
believe there is a God.
There are direct reasons why it is more sufficient to be a theist for scientific, even straight physical reasons than there are for you to be an atheist. I mean, I think that you perfectly demonstrated it here. You can't even give any sort of alternative justification for your atheism. You can't.
I don't have to justify my atheism.
Well, some other scientists might have an idea, but that's not evidence that justifies your atheism. That is a faith.
I don't have to
that
justify my
maybe
atheism.
another scientist has
Justify
proved
the reason I have
that
to
can
be a
justify
theist.
your atheism.
By the way, just to let you know, Callahan, I put a link to a guy who was an atheist PhD, and he's now a Christian, if you want to check that out.
Okay, just because one guy's a moron doesn't mean, creationism is right.
That sounds so unreasonable, it's almost laughable. I'm just going to say
what is your name? Calcu?
Callahan.
Well, it's spelled with a Q.
It's Scottish.
Callahan. Okay.
It's properly pronounced Coolahoon, but
Callahan.
Callahan is a
there's really no reason behind basically everything. There's only a couple things you brought out that are even worth any consideration whatsoever. Everything else has just been biased to the core.
Callahan, I would make
what do
an
you think you
observation
guys
to
do?
you.
I mean, you guys have a
probably don't wanna
narrative,
believe.
and you try to you try to force evidence to fit it.
No,
And plus, tell me this: when do Christians try to hurt people? Do you think Christians are radical? Are you one of those?
When do Christians hurt people? Have you ever heard of the Holocaust?
Have you ever heard of
you must not know anything about the Holocaust because that wasn't even done by Christians. That was done. At the very
Hitler
least.
was Christian.
No.
Have you read Mein Kampf?
Yes.
No.
He was Christian. He believed in God.
You're getting brainwashed, bro, by listening to all these atheists here online. That's very evident.
Let me address that.
Brainwashed.
Not to mention,
by the way, actually, Mein Kampf.
not just Hitler. The slave trade was perpetuated and justified by Christianity.
Callahan, let me explain.
What about the Muslims? What have they done?
Hold on,
They
guys.
chop people's heads off in the Middle East. What about them? Are they radical?
Hold on.
That's radical. I'm an anti-theist. I believe all religions.
Callahan,
Atheists,
Callahan,
what do they do?
Hold on, guys. Hold on. I want to address something. It's my own hangout. Crying out loud. Callahan, Adolf Hitler was not a Christian. He
was a Christian.
Let me explain something to you. He gave up his Christianity when he got into politics and started becoming popular. He decided he hated Christianity.
No, he did not.
Yeah, I'm going to provide you with some evidence.
You can go to Wiki. I mean, like, Wiki is the best source for information, but you can read on there and see that.
Did you say Wikipedia is the best source of information?
Guys, I'm trying to...
Kevin's trying to say
Get out.
Hold on.
No, I said it's not the best source.
Wait a
Not
minute.
the best source, but you can read it on there.
All right, guys, please. Give me a minute.
Wikipedia is popular opinion.
Callahan, I'm going to read for you a couple of things that Adolf Hitler says, okay? He said this: Christianity is a rebellion against natural law, a protest against nature. Taken to its logical extreme, Christianity would mean the systematic culmination of human failure. He said this also. The reason why he said this also: Christianity is an invention of sick brains. One could imagine nothing more senseless nor any more indecent way of turning the idea of Godhead into a mockery. When all is said, we have no reason to wish the Italians and Spaniards should free themselves from the drug of Christianity. Let's be the only people who are immunized against this disease. He's speaking of the German people. He also said this: The best thing is to let Christianity die a natural death. When understanding of the universe has become widespread, Christian doctrine will be convinced of convicted of absurdity. Christianity has reached the peak of absurdity, and that's why someday its structure will collapse. The only way to get rid of Christianity is to allow it to die little by little. Okay?
Can you post a link of where you're getting all this?
Yes, these quotations were written by in Monologue in Furen Quaptir
Post a link
between
on the
19
website, please.
between 19 all right, between 1941 and 1944. You see, when Adolf Hitler became powerful, he decided he hated Christianity, and these were quotes were written down by Heinrich Heine, who was a young German officer and knew stenography and took down Hitler's table talk for a period of 4 years during World War II. Okay, so
I'm asking.
So hold on, I'm not quite
Give
done.
me the link.
I'm not quite done. I gave you information. You can look it up yourself.
I don't trust you.
Well, then don't trust me. But
Give me the link.
Let me finish what I'm saying. This fella was a stenographer for Hitler, and he wrote down what Hitler said. Historians don't argue that it is true. They generally agree. Adolf Hitler did make these comments. So, if you read Mein Kampf and you read it carefully, you'll see that in Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler pays tribute to the German gods and the Norse gods because he was a Germanic freak, an Aryan superiorist, whatever. And he believed in the existence of gods, but he did not believe Christianity was true. He pays homage to the god Odin and Thor and other ancient mythological Germanic gods in the book Mein Kampf. So if anything can be gleaned about Hitler's religion from his book Mein Kampf, then it would be that he was a polytheist, but not a Christian.
He was a Christian.
No, I just
that's
you see, this is what I'm saying. Here it is, guys. You provide quotations.
You haven't provided me with evidence. You just give me speculation.
You provide quotations.
What evidence do you have that he wasn't? What evidence do you have that he was a Christian?
From in the description, please.
You provide quotations of Adolf Hitler, which slander Christianity terribly and call it horrible things.
It is horrible.
And then an atheist says, you haven't provided me with anything to prove that Adolf Hitler was not a Christian. This is the intellect that Callahan that you bring into the table. It's no intellect to it.
It's more than yours, to be honest.
So what you have here, Neff, what you have here is the manifestation of atheists in the comment section. This is what happens when they actually have to think about what they're saying, and they're challenged with people who show that they don't know what they think that they know, and their interpretation of things and events and of our views is very hypocritical at its core, and it's hilarious just listening to the things that they say coming out of their mouth.
Oh, I'm just saying
Have you ever listened to what comes out of your mouth?
Hey, Callahan, real quick though, can you show me proof that he was a Christian?
Read Mein Kampf. Also, have you ever heard of the Reich Skan?
You asked Nephilim Free to give you proof. Why don't you give
Okay.
He doesn't say
listen. The Reich Skan Quartet is the first, I think it's the first peace treaty that Nazi Germany ever did. And guess who it was? It was with the Catholic Church.
They're not even Christians if you look
They
at
are
them.
Christian. The Catholic Church is Christian.
Do you know why he spoke to the Catholic Church?
Yeah.
Because he was a spokesman. That's the reason why. It's not because he was a Christian. It's because he knew what to say that people wanted to hear.
Right.
So he still portrayed himself as a Christian.
And if you're as smart as you think you are, maybe you should be able to put two and two together with the quotes that he gave you.
Hold on, everybody, for a second. I'm going to say a thing, and then Westcott wants Mike. Callahan, the thing is, he manipulated the Catholic Church to use them as a tool during World War II. That's all. Secondly, you've made a mistake. You said that in Mein Kampf, Adolf Hitler says he's Christian. He says no such thing in that book. I don't know why you said that.
Mein Kampf.
Yeah,
I can do a word search on it right now.
He does not say he's Christian in Mein Kampf. Go ahead, Westcott.
See, Callahan, here's how we know you haven't studied any history, because if you knew history, then you'd realize that first of all, Hitler broke
Here's
all
a
his
quote.
treaties.
Here's a
Hitler
quote
broke all
from
his
Mein
treaties.
Kampf. I believe that I am acting in accordance with the will of the Almighty Creator by defending myself against a Jew. I am fighting for the work of the Lord.
Yeah, but yeah, okay,
That's
that's
a
in
direct
there.
quote from Mein Kampf.
What
That's in
Lord?
there, but that's talking about, like, look, the Bible clearly says he's the God of Israel. He's a God. The Jewish people are the chosen people of God. So
Well,
so for him to go against the chosen people of God demonstrates that he is not a Christian.
What
No,
Lord?
because there's a lot of anti-Semitism back then.
Many people lie about
Most Christians hated the Jews.
We already
A lot
know
of
that Hitler
Christians
lied.
today
Most
hate
the Catholics did at the and
Hold on, guys.
Callahan,
a lot of
we
Protestants.
already know that Hitler lies, right? We
Yeah,
already
he's a
know that Hitler's a
politician.
liar, right?
He's a politician. All politicians lie.
Okay, then why do you believe anything that he said?
I think that's
Because I mean, obviously he didn't act like a Christian, so he wasn't a Christian.
On top of that,
Nah, he justified his actions with Christianity.
hold on,
Of course,
Callahan.
you know why? You know why they justify their actions? Everybody justifies their actions with Christianity because it's the truth. You always justify your actions out of the law book, out of the truth. You say, hey, I could go 35 miles an hour over the speed limit because the law says that it's okay for me to do it with a siren. Yeah, and I had a siren. That's it. That's the ticket.
Plus, there's a lot of false
You always
Christians.
justify your lie.
Oh, so you're
by
going to play the
referring
O.J.
to
Scotsman fallacy?
the book with
Gotcha.
the most truth.
Plus, there is a lot of false Christians, Callahan, and I'm willing to admit that. But
On
the
top
thing
of that,
No, you're just committing a fallacy.
Callahan, on top of that,
committing a fallacy.
just because he said he thought he was doing the work of the Lord,
He believed he was.
You know, okay, great.
Cal, I think you
Hold
are.
on, guys. Hold on.
Muslims think they're doing the work of the Lord, and they're not.
Hold on. Callahan, what Lord? What Lord is he referring to? Did you know in
More than likely the Christian God.
Wait, why would it be more likely the Christian God when in Mein Kampf he pays homage to the ancient Germanic gods of Odin and
Does he?
Thor? Yes.
Where?
I don't remember what chapter. Read it.
So you don't know.
No, I've read it. Okay, so he's paying homage to ancient mythological Germanic gods. So what?
No,
Lord
he
is
said
talking
the
about?
Lord, not
Right. What
not,
Lord
God,
is he
not
talking?
ancient German gods. Besides,
What
if
Lord?
Hitler was paying homage to the ancient German gods, you would have said, whatever they were called.
Well,
No, he said the Lord.
Callahan? Guess what, Callahan? If you were a German and you lived in 200 AD or 400 AD, and you were a German living in Eastern Europe, having yet migrated to Central Europe, and somebody was talking about your God, you might call him Lord.
I would not make that assumption.
Satan is called Satan
I did
Lord.
not live.
I don't think
know
that you guys
assumptions
listen
now.
to
You're
those,
making a
man.
lot of assumptions that you don't know anything about.
Nephilim, are you guys? I'd like to interject a question.
Adolf Hitler's
I'd like
saying
to-
that he was a
I'd
Christian.
like to, Callahan, I'd like to ask you a very specific question. I think it's really key, and in all of the evidence, I did say a while ago that Wikipedia was not the best source, but you can read in there several quotes from Hitler, including the one you just mentioned a little while ago from Mein Kampf. But this question I'd like to ask you, I think, is key. We always seem to overlook this, and I want to ask you, not what you think or what a pastor thinks or what any man or denomination or interpretation of the
Just
Bible
ask the
thinks
question.
Christianity is, who sets the standard for Christianity? And because this is a rhetorical question, you shouldn't have to think very hard about Christianity, who sets the standard. You parallel the life of Adolf Hitler with the life, words, thoughts, action, and intent of Jesus Christ, and they look so much alike, right?
So you're
They're
saying you're the
practically
arbiter of
identical.
who's a Christian?
What's
I
that?
think that
Well,
the
the
Bible
Bible is.
isn't it?
Plus, you have no place at all to even tell us anything about what we think about other people being Christians, because you're an atheist, my friend.
Okay, I'll just go by the Christian people's words and that say that they're Christians. I'll
Like,
believe
you
that
have
they're Christians.
no place whatsoever.
So
to
if somebody
say-
just declares themselves something, they are. So if I declare myself an atheist and I in no way reject God or Christianity, am I an atheist?
Well, as I know you're lying.
neurosurgeon. I'm going to operate on your brain, Callahan.
So
Can I
what's
see-
what's the
can
prime
I see
reason
your
that you don't
credentials?
believe on the Lord Jesus Christ? That
What?
he was God. What do you not do you don't I'm assuming that you don't believe Jesus Christ is God?
He's not God, and neither does the Bible say he's God.
Yeah, actually it does.
No, it doesn't. Where?
Jesus
on
said,
earth-
"Show
why on
us."
earth would you?
Peter
All right, watch
said,
it. I'll look it up.
Philip told him to show us the Father, and it'll strengthen us. And Jesus told him, "Haven't I been with you this whole time, and you never known me?" There's passages all over the Scripture that says the exact same thing. Zechariah 3
But
verse
there's
5
the
talks.
interactions between Jesus and God where they're two separate people.
And plus,
I'm
this is kind of strange anyway, because you're pointing to the Bible and saying the Bible does not say, but I don't. Do you even believe the Bible's even true?
The Bible's a complete lie.
Well, then why would you even refer to a lie to back up your claim? That's just, I mean,
Because I'm making a claim about Christianity,
Whatever.
and
You're just all mixed
what
up,
better
bro.
source
You're
for
just being
making a claim
negative
about
for no
Christianity
reason.
than the
You don't even know
Bible?
why you disagree. You don't even know why you disagree. You just disagree because
I do
something
know why I
emotional
disagree
going
with the
on with you.
Bible.
There's some sort of
Because the
personal
Bible is
idea
immoral.
that you've inherited about Christianity. So everything that you say
what's
got to
worse?
be interpreted in a negative way.
What's worse,
Well,
abortion
even if
or
you
Christianity
want,
in your
still have
mind,
to-
Callahan?
Well, the Bible condones abortion.
Okay, you show me the verse for that.
Numbers chapter 5.
Numbers chapter 5.
So if the Bible
It gives the
describes
ritual
What verse,
and
by
the
the way?
conditions to perform a ritual that will induce a miscarriage, i.e., an abortion.
What verse is that in 5?
Numbers chapter 5.
What verse, dude? Come on.
It's not that long of a verse. It's not that long.
Are you reading off a site? Are you reading off an atheist site? That's what you're doing. Callahan? You have an atheist site in front of you with all the lines.
No, I just know that Numbers chapter 5 is one of three. It's the most direct
Can you guys hear me?
passage of where God condones abortion, because you're literally.
Who condone abortion? What it is a
Can you
test
guys
of
hear
whether a woman is lying or not about her pregnancy.
What?
So God is in control of whatever is happening,
Yeah,
not the drug itself. So he's not condoning an abortion.
it is
You guys can
abortion.
hear me or not?
If the woman commits adultery or she's raped,
Hold on.
the baby will miscarry.
Let's let Multi have something to say.
Oh, you guys can hear me? Okay, good. Yeah, I heard that verse used a couple of months ago. I like to listen to secular stuff sometimes just to see how the atheists think. I heard somebody use that exact same verse. You can't compare God, who is the author of life, deciding who lives and who dies, to human beings throwing millions of their own children out of convenience and then saying, hey, look, the Bible supports abortion. No, it doesn't. In fact, in the book of Exodus, there's a death penalty. In fact, in the book of Exodus, there's a death penalty, Exodus chapter 20 or 21, for a man hitting a pregnant woman. If the child dies, the man dies. No, you can't do that.
Yeah, I just did, and the Bible supports this position.
No.
Numbers 5. I mean, I'm still looking for the verse.
Yeah.
There's a lot of verses in here. I have to.
Okay, let me find you the exact verse.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Just look.
I think this is it. Numbers chapter 5, 11 through 31. The test for an unfaithful wife.
Okay, I'm going to read it aloud. Hold on, guys, in the King James. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, and say unto them, If any man's wife go aside and commit trespass against him, and a man lie with her carnally, and it be hid from the eyes of her husband, and be kept close, and she be defiled, then there be no witness, and there be no witness against her, neither she hath taken with the manner. And the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled. Or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she not be defiled, then the man bring his wife unto the priest, and she shall bring her an offering for her, the 10th part of the epiphany of barley meal. He shall pour out no oil upon it, nor put frankincense thereon, for it is an offering of jealousy, an offering of memorial, bringing iniquity to remembrance. And the priest shall bring her near, and set her before the Lord. And the priest shall take the holy water from an earthen vessel, and of the dust it is in the floor of the tabernacle, the priest shall take and put it into the water. And the priest shall set the woman before the Lord, and uncover the woman's head, and put the offering of memorial in her hands, which was the jealousy offering. And the priest shall have his hand in the bitter water that causeth the curse. And the priest shall charge her by an oath, say unto the woman, if no man hath laid with thee, and if thou hast not gone aside to uncleanness with another instead of thy husband, be thou free from the bitter water that causeth the curse. But if thou hast gone aside to another instead of thy husband, and if thou be defiled, and some man hath laid with thee besides thy husband, then the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing. And the priest shall say unto the woman, the Lord make thee a curse unto it, and an oath amongst the people, when the Lord doth make thy thigh to rot, and thy belly to swell. And this water that causeth the curse shall go into thy bowels, and to make thy belly swell, and thy thigh to rot. And the woman shall say, Amen, amen. And the priest write these curses in a book, and he shall blot them out with bitter water. And he shall cause the woman to drink the bitter water, and that causeth the curse. And the water that causeth the curse shall enter her, and become bitter. Then the priest shall take the jealousy offering out of the woman's hand, and shall wave the offering before the Lord, and offer it on the altar. And the priest shall take a handful of the offering, even of the memorial thereof, and burn it upon the altar. And after that shall he cause the woman to drink the water. And when he hath made her drink the water, then it shall come to pass that, if she be defiled, and hath done trespass against her husband, that the water that causeth the curse shall go into her, and become bitter, and her belly shall swell, and her thigh shall rot, and the woman shall be a curse among her people. And if the woman be not defiled, but be clean, then she shall be free, and she shall conceive seed. This is the law of jealousy, when a wife go blah blah. Okay, nothing about abortion there.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Are
There's
her
nothing
thigh to
about
rot, her
abortion.
belly to swell?
Okay, let me hold on. Stop.
Wait, where does it say she was pregnant at all?
Yeah,
It
it
doesn't.
says her belly swole up,
Yeah.
but it does not say
Yeah,
anything
wait,
about abortion.
what happens when a woman gets pregnant?
No, it says the
belly
water
swells.
of the cursing will make her belly swell, not a pregnancy.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, sorry, it's not there.
Yeah,
It is
and that's
there.
it.
It's the whole thing.
You're just
For you.
confronted with.
There's
No,
nothing about
you're
pregnancy.
assuming things that aren't there. See,
There's
That's
nothing.
not even
Don't
there.
do
You're making apologetics right now.
There's nothing
What's-
about.
Actually, I mean, apologetics is explaining.
There's nothing about
Did you not know
pregnancy.
that? That's what you're doing. You're making apologetics for your atheism.
Calhoun, there's nothing.
I don't have to make an apology for my
Calhoun, listen.
atheism. I just
You
reject
all
your
the time.
theism.
Hey, wait, guys, wait, Calhoun.
That's
I just
apologetics.
read it. There's nothing about pregnancy in that whole chapter. Nothing about any pregnancy.
It's the whole thing is called the test for an unfaithful wife.
Yeah, but you're
It
assuming
has
that
nothing
she's
to do with
pregnant.
pregnancy.
That's
Didn't say she was.
That's what the
There's-
entire verse is all about. The test for an unfaithful wife.
Right, but there's nothing
She
about
didn't
pregnancy.
pregnant.
What does a woman do when she's unfaithful? She has sex. What
Are you sure?
does
Maybe
Jen
she's
assume is
kissing.
going to happen when you have sex? You
But-
get
but-
pregnant.
And when you have sex, it does. When a woman has sex, she doesn't get pregnant every time. Sometimes there's a.
Excuse me.
Sometimes a woman doesn't get
but
pregnant.
sometimes she
But
does get pregnant.
Calhoun, you said it wasn't about abortion. That means she had to be pregnant. Where's the passage in there that says she was pregnant?
If it says
It doesn't say it. Nowhere.
it does. It's in there.
No,
You're
I
just
just
lying.
read it for you.
Well, if you read into it, sure,
Why?
it's in there, yeah.
Oh, and
don't
the spirit
imply
of Joseph
stuff,
be
but
come
don't
upon
imply.
him, and he be jealous.
I'm lying, he said. Calhoun, I just want one thing from you. I want you to show me the passage that says she was pregnant, so we can know that you're actually doing something from your own head and you're not reading crap off of an atheist website that got it from another atheist website that got
Hey,
it.
I just
This
realized
is line
something.
14. Yeah, this is
Were
line
you-
14. And the
were you in that
spirit
chat
of
room?
jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she be defiled. Or if the spirit of jealousy come upon him, and he be jealous of his wife, and she not be defiled.
Okay, great.
That means
Where's the
I
statement?
would assume that would mean sex, that she had sex.
Great, sex. But now where's the
And
statement
okay,
of pregnancy?
Here's line 21. Then the priest shall charge the woman. Oh, I'm sorry. And the priest shall charge the woman with an oath of cursing, and the priest shall say unto the woman, The Lord make thee a curse and an oath among thy people, when the Lord doth make thy thigh to rot and thy belly to swell.
Okay, so the curse word.
That's the magic word. That's the magic verse. That's the magic line right there.
So the curse
when the Lord doth make thy thigh to rot and thy belly to swell.
That's exactly what it says. It does not one time talk about pregnancy there. It does not one time talk about.
And if you look at the New International Version.
So what? I think that version's wrong anyway.
The King James Bible has long since been proven to be inaccurate.
No, it's actually been proven to be the most
line
accurate.
21, here the priest is to put the woman under this curse, and may the Lord cause you to become a curse among your people when he makes your womb miscarry and your abdomen swell.
Okay, so
you can't compare a translation that's thought for thought versus one that's word for word, like a KJV or an NKJV. You can't compare word for word. Thought for thought.
Let's put it this way. What about since you always like refer to other religions, religious books? Why don't you show us in the King James version where it condones abortion? Let's put it that way.
It's all the same books. It's just different translation.
No. Let me
King James is just inaccurate.
No, let me make a point, guys. No, actually, hold on.
He chooses to be ignorant, guys.
This formal equivalent?
I want to say something. I don't want to have to raise my voice. I got people sleeping in my house. Calhoun, the truth about the Bible is this: the King James has been proven to be by far the most accurate translation by scholars on the matter. Calhoun, listen for a minute. You'll learn something. On my video, on my YouTube channel, is a video in that video appears the man who is the curator of the Dead Sea Scrolls Museum. He is an expert in Hebrew and ancient Greek. He knows the Bible. He knows the scriptures. He's not a Christian. He's a Jew. He knows the languages that the Bible was written in. He can read and write ancient Hebrew. Okay. He says on camera in that video that the King James is essentially what you have exactly word for word what the Old Testament says in Hebrew. That the translation is superlative.
It's not. It's two completely different languages.
It says that it's superlative.
It's different languages, but what he's saying is it's got the whole the same.
If you were, let me put it like this, Calhoun. If you were to go to Israel and find 10 of the greatest scholars of the ancient Old Testament texts that were able to read and write Hebrew, and if you asked them what is the most accurate English translation of the original Old Testament, and they will all tell you the King James.
Okay, and now find me 10 scholars in Israel that will say that.
The thing is, these new modern translations are corruptions.
They're not. They're better translations.
No, they're not, Kenny.
The King James has been proven to be more literate. Like you, it's easier to read as well.
They're gross distortions. Christians have no business reading.
That's your opinion.
No, that's a fact. It's
your opinion.
No, we can prove it.
I don't trust a word you say.
Callahan, we can prove it by going to the ancient text, finding out what those words mean, and then compare the passage in a new modern translation to what the King James says. And every single time, the King James is going to be at least, if not more accurate, and always going to be more accurate overall than any modern translation. All modern translations of the Bible are horribly corrupt, and any well-schooled
How do you know they're corrupt?
And any well-schooled Christian knows this.
It doesn't matter because Callahan's being willfully ignorant anyway. He doesn't.
I'm not being willfully ignorant.
You said an awful lot.
He's believing exactly what everybody else told him and not researching for himself.
Yeah,
and you're not?
Callahan,
I do research. I've seen
you're
both
projecting.
sides. I've seen both sides. Exactly. That's why I can defeat evolution because I know both sides.
Hey, look at this. I just found something out. The early editions of the King James Version are not based on the received text. That's interesting.
That's one of those propaganda books.
Yeah.
So let me get this straight. If you agree with it, it's true. But if you disagree with it, it's
No,
false.
the scholars prove it's true.
No, by researching and knowing.
That's right. The scholars know, and they agree.
And what are these scholars?
Well, you should look into it.
Years of scholars,
I
man.
just told you
That's
how
all
to
over the
find one.
Bible, all over the place if you look it up.
I just told you how to find one.
Where can I find one?
I just told you about a video on my YouTube channel where an expert in that matter, who is the curator of the Dead Sea Scrolls, happens to say on camera that the King James is a superlative translation of the original text.
Nah, I'm not going to give you the extra view.
Yeah, so you don't want any information that refutes the things you
Willfully
say.
ignorant.
Yeah.
You're with.
He doesn't want his position.
I mean, you
he
guys
doesn't want to know the
believe
truth. He just
creationism.
doesn't want his position to be changed because he enjoys his sinful lifestyle.
You know that nobody, like, you know, Calhoun, that nobody here is against you, and we don't want to hurt you, and we don't hate you.
You guys do want to hurt me.
No, I don't. I don't want to hurt you. As a matter of fact, you could punch me in the face and all that stuff, and I'll just be like, Jesus did. He just went to the cross. And
I know you guys want to take me out to the street and stone me to death.
I don't want to stone you to
He's
death.
playing with you now.
Yes, you do. According to Leviticus 20:13, that's the verse that's against homosexuality.
We're in the age of mercy right now, so you should take advantage of it.
Yeah, I'm tired of that.
He just left?
No, I kicked him out. I'm not going to hear that slanderous crap against God in the Bible, and not from that. I've had enough.
Well, yeah, the guy wasn't. Anyway.
That's enough of that. You know, all that guy's doing is just wanting to urinate on God, and I had enough of it. It's obvious he doesn't know any of what he's talking about.
Well, I mean,
I'm not going to sit and listen to 2 hours of this kid run the hangout with him, you know, just whizzing on the
Yeah, I mean, we
God.
gave him plenty of time to.
Yeah, to be intellectual and honest in discussion instead. What do we hear? Just, you know, I mean, if you had a translating device that you could put up to his mouth, and the truth would come out of what's behind this, it'd be this: I hate God. Screw your Bible. I hate God. Screw your Bible. You Christians are dumb. I don't like that idea. I'm not a sinner. That's what you'd hear.
yeah, and you know the thing is, we don't even. I don't know if you guys heard this or not, but as Christians, you know, they actually made a watch list, a terrorist or extremist watch list, and Christians are actually at the top above ISIS.
Yeah.
Like the world sees us Christians, the unbelieving world sees us Christians as like the most radical people on. I mean, Satan's deceiving these people literally to. I mean, I'm just saying, you don't be surprised when you see people. Obviously, don't be surprised when you see people coming up and telling you that you're cruel, that you're cruel, you're mean, you want to kill everyone, you're abusive, and the more and more it gets closer and closer to Jesus Christ's return, you're going to see more of that.
That's true.
That's Gnosticism.
They consider Christian Christian preaching to be hate speech. You see.
Right. But the Muslims, they're not. They're just peaceful people. This is the way it is. This is just, the Muslims are peaceful. And everybody else is peaceful. Maybe those Muslims might be a little bit of extremists, but they're not nearly as close to those Christians who want to force their beliefs down other people's throats and are bullies and they hate homosexuals. They're homophobes. And
yeah, see, that's what it is because God has judgment against sin.
Right.
So,
He's a just God.
So you got to hate that God.
He's a just God, and He doesn't. And God will never condone the things that He directly forbade in the Old Testament. God didn't change, like when they talked about homosexuality in Sodom and Gomorrah in the New Testament. Well, the point is, the Bible says directly that you shall not lie with mankind as with womankind is abomination. And God, I don't think God's changing. So.
No. God changes. No, He says, I change not.
And watch out for, there's a lot of people, I'm just going to say this as well. You need to be very aware of a lot of people inside of a lot of church buildings, because There are a lot of people. I mean, you already know there are a lot of fakes in there, but it's a little bit. This homosexual agenda is moving into the church, and there's a lot of people who are. They may not be homosexual, but they'll condone that type of behavior, and as a result, they will actually call all of us who stand on the Word of God firmly. They'll call us hateful, and that we need to be the ones who the ones who call themselves Christians who have already compromised. They'll come up to us who stand strong on the Word of God, and they'll call us hateful, and they'll just say we need to be a little bit less judgmental and more loving.
Yeah. The
That's their way.
Presbyterian
That's basically their way of saying accept those homosexuals just like they are.
The Presbyterian Church recently passed an ordinance saying that they allow homosexual preachers, ministers in their churches.
Oh my goodness.
Yep, that was like within the last 6 months.
Well, it's an abomination to the Lord, and the Bible says that directly. The world cannot get around that. It's just the way it is now.
I think they're sending in people as guests and whatever that are homosexual and try to catch the preacher.
Well, guys, I'm gonna put an end to the hangout. It's 2:30 in the morning here, and I've got to get up at 7 o'clock. So.
Is that all?
6:30. Yeah.
Okay.
But thanks for coming, and I wish we'd have some. Next time, maybe we'll get somebody who won't misrepresent the physical evidence in geology, and somebody who actually intellectually discuss the Bible instead of just wanting to, urinate on it. But instead of be honest about the text. Isn't that funny? A pattern. We had a discussion with an evolutionist who was not honest about the physical evidence. Then an atheist who was not, also another atheist who was not honest about what the Bible actually says. Why is it that atheists have to be so consistently dishonest when they discuss things? It tells you if their arguments come from their heart. It's not from their mind. It's out of their heart they speak. Anyway, thanks for coming, you guys, and hopefully we can get together again soon. Thanks for joining my hangout.
All right.
All right, we'll see you guys.
See you guys.
Yep. Thanks. Take care.